Support.
Thank you, Bob. Comments, questions? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, we're to our first public comment. Anybody from the public like to make a comment? Well, you just don't have an inch to spare in that, do you?
Ladder.
If I could jump up faster, I'd do it for you. Okay,
Longer stick.
all right, I'll close public comment and move directly into elected officials and department heads.
We good now, Gary?
I know, here, give me
Good morning.
morning.
I wanted to just give a brief update.
If you
about-
would state your
Oh, sorry,
names.
Bridget Hassig with Benzie Senior Resources.
Thank you.
I wanted to give a brief update just on things that are happening with the organization and with some of our activities. We are obviously waiting for the proposed federal budget because that does influence our receipt of funding for home delivered meals and congregate meals, primarily for our organization. And you'll hear a little bit more about that with the presentation this morning. But as we await, we're doing a lot of advocacy. So I've been asked to speak at the Benzie Human Service Coordinating Council special meeting on June 30th, where we're going to have at least 2 state representatives present and possibly some other elected officials or their staff from the U.S. Senate or the U.S. House. And so we're going to, I'll specifically be speaking on food insecurity in older adults and the effects of losing funding if that happens. I also invited Christina Barkel, who is the food equity specialist from Groundwork in Traverse City, to join me so that she has a much more thorough background in food insecurity with families and children. And so that way, both of us will be presenting a unified front there on food insecurity in Benzie County, which actually is a pressing issue. I also wanted to say that along with funding, I want to express exceptional appreciation for the updated millage funding that we are going to receive October 1st. It is possible that that will actually meet what the cuts we would receive federally and contractually, so that, as you all know, we've been doing some restructuring, some repositioning of programming, how we do service delivery so that we're as efficient as possible. And with this, I think that we can absorb a very flexible, fluid funding environment and be able to respond to it proactively versus scarcity and cutting, which is not something that we want to do. The other thing is that we engaged May 30th and 31st in a strategic planning session with an outside organization, Rally Advisors, and we participated actually in a process that I pursued, which is called Align 360. And to me, it's one of the most operational strategic planning endeavors you can do, meaning when you leave the meeting, you're actually going to use the strategic plan daily. And so this particular plan really set us out for the next 18 months with specific goals and strategies to reach around several different themes, one being food security, one being movement generally, the other being purpose. Not only with the older adults that attend the gathering place that are active, but with those that are unable to. So the homebound, the isolated, those that can't get experiences, we are looking for ways to provide that. And you've heard me discuss before, working with the Darcy Library, being able to get library books out to them, but we're also going to be getting activities out to them, such as card making, things like that, that allow them to continue to contribute to the community, which is obviously going to affect them physiologically and psychologically. We know that by research, to give that purpose back. The strategic plan, Align 360, addresses marketing, operations, team development, and finance, and then wraps it all around in values, which is why it appealed to me, because as you know, we have been really embedding values into everything we do. Job evaluations, job descriptions, our board meetings, everything. And so what we came to, which I just wanted to share with you, we came up with a why and a mission and a vision. And the why for us is we believe Benzie County older adults are a resource and we value their contributions in our shared community. And our mission is to meaningfully engage and support Benzie County residents over 60 to enhance their lives physically, socially, and intellectually. The vision is for Benzie Senior Resources to be known as a rural demonstration for its commitment to creative, innovative opportunities for older adults to be supported and contributors in a shared community situation. So I think out of all of this with the strategic planning, what really hit us the last day is when you think of Benzie Senior Resources, you think of us providing resources to older adults. And what our conversations allowed us to do was flip it and go, you know what? Seniors are the resources also in this community. And when you come at things that way, it changes how you approach service delivery. And it changes it from a charity model to an engagement model. It changes it from how we provide things. And it's not in a benevolent kind of, we're giving you things. It's you are identifying with us what is needed and helping us design that. So amazingly, to that point, about a week after we did this exercise in strategic planning, Lester Brownell, who plays in a band for us, who is also, I believe, 88 or 92. I wasn't able to confirm that before this meeting. I was so thrilled. We were taking a look at updating our community cupboard where we get donations from Family Fare and we provide that to the older adults. We have to change how we've been doing that because it's inequitable. And literally a week after this strategic planning, he on his own went out and said, help our family free food program. And he actually designed for us an entire updated way to be able to provide food that we receive from our community. And it's incredible. And that's what we're always going to be searching for from people is that level of engagement as well as receiving services. So that was outstanding. The other thing we are doing is also with food, working with the Northwest Food Alliance because Feeding America and also Gordon's Food Services are experiencing challenges with getting us favorably priced items, as well as some items are being removed from Feeding America so we can fill that gap. And one of the examples we did is we are specifically working with local farmers. And so each month we are highlighting a particular farm. And so, for instance, for Produce Bingo that we have once a month, we normally have about 35 people participate. We actually brought another farm in to give us produce and make that a very, tons of choices for them and things like that. And we ended up with 77 people in one night. So we know we're hitting a need for people that are not only interested in fresh food, but we want to be able to push that out and be part of a contributor of the economy, as well as a social service agency. So between workforce development and our service delivery development, we hope to be very active in every part of Benzie. Any questions? Okay,
Very cool.
thanks.
Bridget, you've been on board 6-7 months?
6 months.
How's the experience been for the first 6 months?
Good. It's challenging in terms of, you know, my previous experience was in different areas, different demographics, things like that. Aging is in this scenario, we are looking at basic needs. You know, when I've been in some other places, it was lifelong education and, you know, people who wanted trips and things like that. And we offer trips at Benzie, actually very successful ones, but it was a different level of engagement. And here in Benzie County, we are doing back to basics with food security and basic movement and physical opportunities. And I think particularly with a rural county, we are going to need to be looking at a year from now, doing more site-specific things. Like I've talked about satellites and partnerships for activity, but like we might need to go to Thompsonville twice a month and then go to other areas in the county. So take it to the communities versus expecting people to come to us for meals. And so, you know, we can look at delivering frozen meals 5 days a week. You know, we have a pickup and go. So I think that the biggest challenge is how do we push it out, particularly since the community has said, we support you with a mill. I mean, that's incredible. And so that'll be a longer term, but it's been great. The community has been exceptionally welcoming and I appreciate that personally. And the board of directors is truly an outstanding group. And when I was actually interviewing for this position, I said the board and our finances are the two things that will work or break for me because I was in a position already and that our board of directors is exceptional. And so that doesn't always happen. I'll put it that way.
What I hear you saying about programming is you need to consider more about outreach, sounds like.
Yeah,
And as we often say here at the commission, we're not even sure what services our community was gonna want 5 and 10 years from now, so we have to be on alert for that too.
Yep.
Given the demographics of our community,
mhm.
that probably impacts your agency as much as anybody.
If not more, right? Because again, Benzie's super unique in the number of 60+ population and its growth. But then at the same time, the percentage of those that are low income with that, it really positions us. That's a unique challenge, not a dilemma, but a challenge for sure.
Thanks for being here today.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you. Thanks.
Yep,
Yep.
Rhonda?
As I go out and share your report with the meetings that I attend, I want to make sure that I have this right. What I wrote down is, in your strategic plan, there's a shift in the narrative from, in addition to serving seniors, to recognizing their purpose in the community as a resource.
Yes.
Do I have that right?
Absolutely.
Okay,
And
good.
what that means, like, to the point is, and this is very frequent for nonprofits, we don't plan. We just do.
Right.
And when you suddenly sit back and go, but are we doing it to the best of our ability? That means you look beyond the team. You know, we don't want to be approached with an incredible program and go, well, Michelle can't handle that, or well, I can't handle that. We have a responsibility to look to the skilled set and the human capital of the older adults that are in our community, because we have people that will step up to the plate. We just haven't offered that yet. So we will be offering that for the first time with this community cupboard. We're looking for a coordinator who's an older adult that has certain skill sets. So we're making them part of the team.
Awesome. I just want to make sure I had it right.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Rhonda. Any other comments or questions? Again, thanks for being here today.
Sorry.
Any other department heads? If not, let's move into the bills.
Good morning, Kelly Long, County Treasurer. We had bills from June 6th through June 19th in the amount of $481,239.12.
Anybody like to,
Make the motion to pay the bills in that amount.
Gary makes the motion, is there support?
Treg will support.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Remind me, is this roll call? Thank you.
Janat,
Yes.
Nye,
Yes.
Roloffs.
Yes.
Sauer,
Yes.
Trigg. Yes. Davis.
Yes.
All right, I do have a quick update in my department. Tax bills are going pretty good this year. Those will be out next Tuesday, the 1st. I wanted to let the board know we've had some issues with some address changes. So if you're out and about in your community and you hear anything, I believe Brianne and I have solved a big portion of that. So hopefully going forward, we won't have that issue anymore. I'm sure some of you have heard a few things of people change their address with us and it goes back to the old address. And we have established a system where the assessors are going to be in sole charge of those addresses now. And we've set up a system of when they're going to send us databases with those new address updates. So hopefully we're keeping our fingers crossed, but we were pretty tickled pink this time around that things were being processed properly. The only other issue would be if people fail to change their addresses and can't figure out why they're not getting their bills. Please make sure they contact their assessor to get that changed. It's on the new bills now that tells them exactly where to go, what their assessor's phone number and or email is. We've did all those updates this year. The only other issue, of course, would be the Postal Service not wanting to forward that first class mail. So I don't know why, but if you're a snowbird and you're out and about, you're not getting your tax bill and you want to know where it's at, it's because they're not going to forward your first class mail. So please contact your township and or county and we'll be more than happy to get you that information. Fun.
Post
Um,
office.
Yeah. But besides that, everything's going great. Things are going to start slowing down for us here in the next couple months. We're going to work on some training issues and a couple of other things that we got coming up. And it's been going great.
Isn't it normal protocol to forward first class mail, but not forward second and third class mail?
Used to be.
There's a lot of changes at the post office that we're experiencing. It's been a difficult shift to figure out what the post office is gonna do and not do, and we have to take it to special post offices for special services because the ones in Benzie aren't offering those services. So it's been a new learning curve for everybody when it comes to the mail.
Yes. Within the last probably year or so.
Yeah.
We get a lot of people that say, yeah, I didn't get my tax bill and we've had them contact the post office and their reasoning is we don't forward first class. So I don't understand. It says important tax bill on it and they won't forward it. So crazy.
Well, even when it does get forward, sometimes there's a long delay.
Yeah.
Months.
Yeah, we're still getting phone calls from people that have received our delinquent tax notice from April 1st. I just got my bill in the mail 2 months later. And we're getting ready to send out delinquent notices next week. So, yeah.
You have an idea how many don't get delivered? I know from watching Cindy, and it takes almost a month to a month and a half to get them back. They will
Mhm.
not forward them. I'm curious how much we're.
Yeah,
having a
I
difficult
don't
time
know.
getting People.
I know when we do delinquent notices, we'll get a nice stack back. You know, but a lot of that had to do with the way our address changes were occurring. And now that we're
Mhm.
doing it differently this year, hopefully the stacks are going to be smaller. Hopefully they're just people that have moved and haven't updated their addresses yet. So keep our fingers
Those
crossed.
Seasonal people, they always
Yeah.
seem to have a difficult time telling you where they're at. Not sure when anything's coming, even though we've been sticking with the same
Right.
date all the time as far as getting them. in.
Yep.
Anyway, thank you.
This is part of the reason we were looking at, one of the reasons for the new BSNA is you can digitally send a lot of these things as well, in addition to the post office mail. And, so that would be an improvement as the mail continues to be a wonder for a lot of
Well, if
things.
they contact treasurers, the treasurers can email
Yeah,
too. So
Correct. Right.
that
But
needs
but
to
with
get
the
out there.
BSNA, if we have email addresses, I'll be automatically be able to email those as well as print them. I still have to print them. We
Mm.
still have to do that. But once we get upgraded and we get those email addresses for those that really would like them emailed, it's an automatic. I want to email and print and it'll automatically email all those ones that are set up.
I think that'd be more efficient. But we can't, still gotta mail
Yeah. State statute says you still need to mail original bill, but at least we know they're getting it via email if they never get it via
Mm.
postal. So,
it. You can verify that.
yeah. Yep. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Gilly. Why don't we move into our 9:30 presentation? Andy, if you would introduce yourself and
Sure. Good morning, everyone.
warning.
My name is Candy Lannon, and I am the Executive Director for the Area Agency on Aging of Northwest Michigan. We're based out of Traverse City, but cover 10 counties, and Benzie County is one of them. We are governed by a board of directors, and Bob Roloff is one of our board of directors. We're very fortunate to have him. I'm here today to talk to you about our 2024 annual report. But before I dive into that, I wanted to talk a little bit about our relationship with Benzie Senior Resources in Benzie County. And so one of our primary roles as an agency is to grant out federal and state dollars to local organizations. And so one of those organizations in Benzie County is Benzie Senior Resources. Each year we grant, well, in fiscal 24, we granted out about $350,000 to Benzie Senior Resources alone. In addition to those dollars coming into Benzie County, we also have other providers of services that we grant dollars out. So beyond the 350,000, there's quite a bit more in terms of funding that comes into the county for older adults and their caregivers. We have a very collaborative relationship with Benzie Senior Resources. Bridget jumped right in. Like she said, been here about 6 months. I think 2 months in, maybe we were out there doing our annual assessment, which we're required to do by the state, assessing the programs, the services, the finances, all of that for the organization. They did a fantastic job. She didn't miss a beat. So really happy to have that relationship with Bridget and all of her team. Each county that we serve, there's a focal point, and in those counties, it's typically the council or the commission on aging. And then beyond that, we contract with a lot of other providers, both for-profit and nonprofit organizations. But our focal points always are the local counties and commissions on aging. So this is my first year going out and doing these presentations. I've been in my role as the executive director for, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks, a month, 3 months. Well, 3 months interim and yeah. So
You're killing it.
yeah, this is great. But I'm not new to aging and certainly not to just the environment and healthcare, my background. And I was with the agency 20 years ago when I was 2 years old. So I was right out of college. I worked for the agency for about 5 years and then we moved. So I'm back and very happy to be back. But I do have the annual report that I wanted to go through. Was this also in your packets? Okay. So I can do a couple different things. I can just walk you through highlights of our annual report, or I'm happy to field questions, or both.
You walk us through some highlights and then people may have questions after that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes. So starting on page 1 of the annual report, you can see that our annual operating budget is about $18 million. 70% of that is Medicaid dollars, Medicaid funding. We are a prepaid ambulatory health plan on one side, that's 70% of our revenue. And on the other side, we function as a nonprofit and we receive Older Americans Act and Older Michiganian Act dollars and some other miscellaneous grants. So about 30% of our funding comes from that way. We contract the majority of the funding that we get, we contract that out through a couple of different types of contractual arrangements. And the dollars that we grant out are basically for home and community-based services for the most part. So you're talking about nutrition programs and other types of services. With Benzie Senior Resources specifically, we grant out dollars for home delivered and congregate meals. But then we also have participants in their homes that we provide services for through Benzie Senior Resources and others. But for Benzie, it's personal care, homemaking, foot care, nursing services, I think medication management, snow plowing. We put a lot of dollars into supporting people into their homes, but we don't necessarily, we're not the ones doing the direct service. We do have care management and Medicaid waiver program, which are the coordination and the care management pieces of the nurse and social workers that go into the homes. They work with the person on their plan of care. And based on what their plan of care is, then our staff comes back to the office and kind of reaches out then to the different organizations to put together the care plan and the services and get them in the home, utilizing our different providers. So you can see on page 2 our list of contractors. And this page specifically is for Older Americans Act and Older Michiganian Act dollars. So state and federal dollars, not Medicaid. On page 3, these are the programs that we provide directly through our office. So the care management, My Choice Medicaid waiver, some respite that we contract out. We typically, you can see our participant number, it's about 750, and that's across 10 counties. And that's very intensive in-home people that are medically at risk for nursing home placement, or they would be in a nursing facility of some sort if they weren't given these services at home. So they're very high acuity in terms of what their medical needs are. On page 4, you can see, and I like this picture because it has the person in the middle. We always focus on the person that we're caring for and their caregiver. But all the circles around that person are kind of wrapping around them, providing them with the different supports that they need. And each care plan is unique, as you can imagine, as unique as the person is and what their needs are. So when I say that we contract out services, this page is mostly referring to the Medicaid waiver, so the Medicaid dollars, but also some of the other state and federal funds. But when you see those little bubbles, that's where Benzie Senior Resources fits in providing the actual services to those participants that are highlighted in the numbers that you see there. And then on page 5, talking a little bit more about the direct services that we provide. We have 4 social workers that man our telephone lines. So when phone calls come in from anyone in the region, we triage that, oftentimes making referrals out back to the local community. But sometimes they're simple questions that we can answer. Other times they're more in-depth where we go into some options counseling and we talk about long-term care planning. They might need support right away at home with additional programs and services. So then we coordinate the in-home assessments from that point in time. But just in 24, we had over 8,500 contacts with individuals calling into our our phones. We also have a housing specialist, so you can imagine she's very busy. Her biggest challenge is, even though she knows all of the different homes, the different people to connect with, the apartments, the licensed facilities, it's very, very difficult because people have a hard time finding something that's accessible and affordable, as you can imagine. So we do have her on staff full time. Her focus typically is with those that are in our programs. So an example is maybe somebody coming out of a nursing facility that wants to live back in the community, but they sold their home prior to going into the nursing facility. So where do they go? So it's helping to find them a place to live if they don't have a loved one that they can live with. So a lot of different scenarios, that's just one of them. And homelessness is another big one. So finding people that need care that are currently homeless, but to get them services, they need to have somewhere to be to have the services delivered. So lots of challenges. On the page 6, we also have a long-term care ombudsman. His primary role is to work with people that are in licensed facilities, mostly nursing facilities, but other licensed facilities like assisted living and adult foster care. And he's the advocate. So he goes in and he is the voice to help that person feel heard if they don't feel heard, to help resolve conflict, answer questions, work with the facilities to make sure any issues are resolved. There are just over 3,300 nursing facility and licensed beds in the 10-county region. He is one person. Luckily, through advocacy, our organization does a lot of advocacy. We were able to get additional funding, not just our organization, but statewide. But specifically for our organization, we were able to recently hire another ombudsman. So still 3,300 beds, so potential 3,300 people with 2 ombudsmen in the region. Still not enough, but it's better than it was a couple months ago. And we're hearing from the licensed facilities. I don't know if it's the case in your area or not, but a lot of the facilities are struggling for staffing. So they're not even able to fill all their beds that they currently have. Recently learned more about that. So you can see the number of cases and complaints and facility visits. He's out on the trail all the time, very rarely in the office. The other thing we do is we have a Medicare assistance program. So each year in open enrollment, you probably hear about folks kind of with their questions about Medicare. What's the best plan for them to purchase? It's so confusing. There's all these ads about Medicare Advantage. What do I do? Our office and a lot of the local offices, Benzie Resources and a lot of the other local councils and commissions on aging, they offer free Medicare assistance counseling. So instead of somebody going to an agent who gets paid a commission to sell a certain plan, they can work with a Medicare assistance counselor, oftentimes a volunteer with training, and get a non-biased opinion. They have no skin in the game for any type of commission, and that's a really popular program. And you can see on the bottom of page 6, this was from 2023. We weren't able to get the data for 24 because the program's going through a transition at the state level. But just in 2023, there was a savings for older adults of over $2 million. In healthcare costs. So that's really significant. I can imagine that that's grown in 2024. Those are the highlights of the annual report. I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions? Gary?
Just a couple. You talked about the ombudsman. Are they helping people get to someplace like the Maples or helping navigate the DHHS nightmare? Don't we have other folks that do that too? I see a lot of your services kind of overlap a lot of other things that happen. Community Connections is one of them that I was thinking of and stuff like that. So I'm not saying they're bad things, but how do we streamline this? Because I'm assuming the feds are going to start trying to call back some of the money and make some changes. So I guess I'm just looking for how you visualize this.
Yeah. So typically we don't duplicate services in the community. We partner very, very closely. So we typically always refer out to the local communities. But as you can imagine, each community and what they offer is very unique. So what you may have here in Benzie County, they might not have in Antrim County or Missaukee County as an example. So we can fill gaps. but we work very hard not to duplicate. When we have, if Benzie Senior Resources, for example, is in a home already providing services, and we come in to do an assessment, because we find out they need additionally even more services, Benzie stays in that home. We provide any services that we don't. We contract out then any additional services that they need. So we are very careful not to duplicate for the reasons that you outlined. When it comes to the ombudsman, their role really is to mitigate problems. So one thing that they work with quite a bit is discharges. If somebody does not want to be discharged, but the nursing facility is forcing them to leave. I think there's a special name for that, and I can't think of that right now. But then the long-term care ombudsman would work in there and help to resolve why are they having that person leave? Do they have a place to go? And they would try to mitigate that issue in any way possible, and as quickly as possible. With DHHS, our office, we have a Medicaid specialist. So most of the time, for the Medicaid program, people have to qualify for Medicaid. And community Medicaid is a lot different than long-term services and supports Medicaid. There are different types of Medicaid, different eligibility criteria. So for our Medicaid program, it's called My Choice. And with that program, if somebody comes in, they call us, we find out that they need the My Choice waiver program that keeps them in their home with services. We can help them through the application process with DHHS. So we can help facilitate the process on their behalf. We only have that one person that does that, so we don't offer that service to everybody in the community. As you can imagine, it would be really, there would be a backlog. But we do work closely with DHHS. One of the barriers to getting people on the Medicaid program so quickly is that application process. An example right now, we have people in Benzie County that are, well, actually in Benzie, we don't have anybody waiting on their Medicaid application right now for the My Choice program, which is great news. And we have 2 people that are in process for getting their assessments. So that's great. My Choice Medicaid waiver, we try really hard not to have a wait list. But with funding limitations and staffing limitations, sometimes there are wait lists. So for example, on our care management program, that's the state and federal dollars through the Older Americans Act. You do have 7 people in your county on a wait list to get into that program. For Benzie County, that's not terrible. We've seen that number come down quite a bit, but still we hate to have anybody on that wait list. That is a mix of funding and staff capacity. So we recently lost a nurse in this count that covers this county. We just hired. So now we're working to get her up to speed and get that wait list down to 0. But I don't know if that answers your question about DHHS, but there's a lot of organizations like Community Connections. There's organizations like that throughout the region that we work with, and we try really hard to partner with them and not duplicate.
Because when people go to sign up for this is like the last resort. And to drag this on and take 3-4 months to get there and then get billed for a couple months if you're already there, it's a nightmare.
Mhm.
You know, these folks basically lose everything they had, get to that. So I wish there was a way to speed this up. Maybe in the future we can work on that. And we appreciate your input. I think it's good.
Yeah.
Anything helps.
Thank you. I agree. It's a very complicated system.
Other questions or comments? I'll just have a couple of things for you. I want to stay on that theme of Medicaid. No, at the federal level, they're talking about reducing Medicaid dollars. Much of that is, without being political, much of that's about looking for fraud, et cetera. When you folks sign somebody up on a Medicaid waiver, do you get many challenges on whether they're really eligible or not? Or by the time they've come through your process, there's not a problem with having to worry about them getting cut off?
Typically, once they make it through our process, the only time that in my experience that they've, maybe something has been reversed is during COVID when they allowed a lot of people on Medicaid more quickly. And then after that, kind of worked through that process when they, DHHS went out and wanted to do Medicaid redeterminations to make sure everybody that they let in needed to be let in. It affected a handful of people then that were part of our program because during that redetermination, they were determined by Medicaid not to be eligible any longer. But for the most part, outside of that type of scenario, once they're through and they have that application through the Medicaid system, they're eligible there. Then the other piece to their eligibility is, do they need nursing home level of care? And that's determined by our nurse and social worker when they go through the in-home assessment. So typically, once our nurse and social worker make that determination, unless that person has significant improvement, it wouldn't change for them. They would continue to be on the program.
So I'll stay with that then. You talked about the caregiver respite program.
Yeah.
Is that end of life or is that something different?
Something different. So hospice is more considered end of life care, but the respite care is for the participant and mostly for caregivers. Respite care is to give the caregiver kind of that needed break to go to their doctor's appointment or sit on a park bench and just be able to think and take care of themselves. And so it's when somebody is getting that in-home care and they have a caregiver, we can coordinate respite care through different organizations to come in and sit with that person. So the other person, their caregiver can leave.
So they don't have to be at end of life to
Absolutely not.
that.
No.
And this might be for you, Bridget, but it's what percentage of your budget is relied on their funding?
So for the funds that we receive.
Bridget, come up to here.
Yeah,
Those
thank
of
you.
us who can't hear you.
Thanks, Katie.
Bridget Hatzig, Benzie Senior Resources. There are two different funds that we receive that Candy addressed. One is for home delivered meals and congregates, so that's nutrition, and that's about 350,000, which is about 17% of our budget.
Okay.
The second part is where we receive, and I'm going to use the word reimbursement for providing personal care, respite, some light errands, things like that, light housekeeping, excuse me, and errands, as contracted through the My Choice program. So there are 3 providers that work with the Area Agency on Aging. When they have someone come into the Medicaid system, and I'm just going to use that as the big umbrella, when they come into the system, they are assessed and then they come to us. The organization comes to us to actually provide the service in Benzie.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'd have to double check. I wouldn't even want to do this off the top of my head to see what type of revenue that is. It falls in line though with what we receive in cost share from those older adults that don't participate in the My Choice program. It's actually less than that. So for instance, in our home health care, we have, I believe the census, for lack of better words, is 19 clients are under the My Choice program and 70 or 60 are part of our millage funded program. So.
Okay, thank you. Great. Any other comments or questions? If not, we appreciate you being here today.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here, Candy.
Thank you.
We look forward to seeing you again. So what I'd like to do is move into new business. I see John has just showed up. John, we've got you at the top of the agenda for new business. I'll invite you to come to the podium, identify yourself and the subject, if you would, please.
Morning, John Stimson, Homestretch Nonprofit Housing Corporation. Oh, okay. Morning.
Morning.
So per your agenda, I guess, thank you for putting it on the agenda first off. But we're about to embark upon a grant application due on the 26th for $1 million to the Federal Home Loan Bank for an affordable housing program grant. It's a big chunk of money for us for that program, but we need quite a bit on this development, Crystal Commons, in Thompsonville. And without that $1 million, we probably wouldn't be able to fund the whole project. In fact, there's another 1.2 million that we're asking the state of Michigan to participate in. Part of the need for such heavy capital on this development is that we're front ending the water supply for 32 units, which is the complete build out at the end of the project. So we're doing it in phases. We have 12 units in the first phase, and to fund the water, we need to do that up front. Otherwise, we can't build the first 12 units. So this grant request covers $750,000 to bring a water main from Crystal Mountain down to the site, and it will serve 32 units, but initially it'll only serve 12. So we're front loading the cost of that water main on 12 units. Eventually it'll be spread over 32, but each phase it'll get a little bit easier. So we've got a big hurdle ahead of us. We're pulling out the stops on trying to get as much support from the community as possible. And that's the purpose of my asking to be on the agenda today. If you would support this project, not monetarily, but just with a letter of support saying that you're behind the project and you want to see it come to fruition.
Let's open it up to questions. Maybe I'll kick it off and that might encourage some other thoughts.
Okay.
So I understand, you've got to put the infrastructure in and you can't just do it for 12 units. In fact, it'd cost you a whole lot more if you just try to do it in phases anyway. Most people sitting at the table here probably are not familiar with these funds from Federal Home Loan Bank. Can you describe that relationship and what, if any, trailing obligations the county has by writing a letter of support?
So the fund itself is where almost all the banks in our region get their capital to lend out and then make money in interest. And they take that in the form of profits. And a portion of that has to get paid back to the Federal Home Loan Bank for the use of those funds. It's a regional fund that the federal government allocates to make lending possible. So the money that we're going after is actually profits from member banks in our region that have to pay a fee to the Federal Home Loan Bank. They then take that pot of money and they dole it out for the purpose of affordable housing. It's actually an act by Congress that created it this way. It has to be used for affordable housing. So it's not as though it's taxpayer money that is being captured and then loaned out or given out in grants. It's actually profits from banks that make money on that capital that they borrow. And as far as an obligation for Benzie County and taxpayers and what have you, there really is none as far as supporting this letter. There's no monetary obligation on your behalf. Now, I'll go as far as saying that Weldon Township did give us a payment in lieu of tax. So instead of paying an ad valorem tax, we're paying a reduced rate. And that reduced rate then helps us lower the rents or decrease the amount of capital required for the project itself. So there is some benefit from the area in as far as that tax relief that we've been granted. It's a legal mechanism. It's a correct thing to do. But for tools like that, we wouldn't probably even be able to supply or apply, excuse me, to the Federal Home Loan Bank. They want to see that the community has buy-in. They want to see, is there a tax abatement on the project? And we can demonstrate that now.
And you probably have a sponsoring bank.
We do. It's Honor Bank. And they've been wonderful to work with. They're community oriented. In fact, I asked them if they could give us a nonprofit rate. And they did come back with a rate that was more competitive than if you or I were able to go out in the general public and get a rate. So we're about 1 percentage point lower than what you would normally get on the open market. Good community player.
And John, it'll have the feel today as if we're rushing something through. I know for myself, I typically don't like it when someone puts something on my desk and asks me to act on it right then.
Mm-hmm.
But what I've found personally with these programs is it's kind of a fire drill. The window comes open, you got to react. So that's just an explanation for everybody and why we're looking at it today. When is the award going to be decided, and what do you think your likelihood of success?
The application is due on the 26th, and usually in the month of November, they award who gets the pot of money that they're doling out. And this year, I think it's about 18 million that's available. So it's a pretty good sizable amount. As far as our competitiveness and our ability to get the award, we're a small nonprofit. They recognize that. They want smaller nonprofits to flourish, and they want to get their monies up into northern parts of Michigan. So I think we're a pretty good candidate for this, $1 million request. It's not as competitive as if it were 800,000 or 500,000 when you extrapolate it over the number of units that were going to be used to fund this. But in our application, we're demonstrating that this isn't just for 12 units. This is for 32 units. So when you take the credit efficiency of that $1 million over 32, it's a lot more competitive than if it were just on 12. And we're demonstrating that in our application. So the Federal Home Loan Bank is located in Indiana or Indianapolis. And a lot of that money gets filtered down to the southern part of Michigan and the northern part of Indiana. They want to get up here to our area. So I think we're going to be pretty competitive. I don't want to jinx it. I never know going in. I think we have a good chance, but I'm optimistic, put it that way.
$1 million is a significant contribution. If you weren't successful, will you be able to move forward with the project still?
No, but we will be then going to the state and asking for additional funding. I mean, already in October, we have a $1.2 million request to the MISTA for their My Neighborhood program. So that'll be a backstop, but we need that in addition to the $1 million that we're asking for right now from the Federal Home Loan Bank.
And I remember correctly, I think that Crystal Mountain has donated the land.
They
to this
did.
Project.
They've given us 15 acres, and I had an appraisal conducted, and it came out that the value of the land was $90,000. So we're going to take that $90,000 value, and we're going to ask MISTA has another program, employer assisted housing, which will match that 90,000. So we'll parlay that into an additional 90,000. And I'm asking some of the local businesses if they could come up with another 10,000. Then we could say, let's go for $100,000 match and just round it up to 100 instead of 90. That's kind of like pulling teeth on the businesses, but we'll see what happens. We have time to get that request put out.
Gotcha. Other comments or questions for John?
I do. I have a question, John.
Yeah.
Good to see you again.
Yeah, same here.
You've done this in Honor. You've done this in Frankfurt.
Correct.
And they both look amazing. Do you remain the fiduciary? Do you oversee these rentals once they're done? You collect the rent and you do disbursements and pay you remain involved.
We
Is
do.
that correct?
We do. Yes. We are a management company. We're approved by the state of Michigan as a management company. We're also a residential builder. So we're a general contractor as well. It's full turnkey with Homestretch.
Okay.
And it's kind of unique. I mean, Habitat and others, they have to farm out their construction crews. They have to pay another for-profit developer or ask for in-kind contributions. We're a going general contractor, developer, and property management company.
I remain impressed going by the buildings that you oversee, how well kept they are. I think you only have one tenant that really has stuff overflowing from their apartment. Is that by virtue of a lease that you have and you have specific rules, or how do you enforce that?
We do. And it's difficult sometimes. I know driving down this morning, I saw one of the units at Honor,
Go on.
a lot of toys, a lot of little trucks and everything. And I thought it's hard to tell the mother to not have all those toys out there. I mean, I can remember our house when we had little kids. As long as it's not offensive, we have a pretty strong back office for maintenance, and it's actually a construction manager, and he can be kind of a hard guy sometimes. And because of his position, that's a natural for him, right? So he does come down on the tenants when it's warranted. If they don't pay their rent or they're in violation, we actually post right on their front door the violation. Now, we don't do it first class mail or text. We put it right on their front door so they know they're in violation as soon as they walk in. I think those are some of the tricks that we've learned over the years.
And your units in Honor and in Frankfurt, both buildings are full.
They are
You have
100%.
wait lists.
We do. When it comes to wait lists, though, we ask always, where are they working? Are they working in Frankfurt? Are they working in Honor? Are they working in Traverse City? Where can we place them close to their work? And that's sort of the idea behind, the Thompsonville project. Who's going to be working close to that area? Because right now, a lot of them are commuting from Frankfurt or Traverse City or other areas. If we can get their commute time from 40 minutes down to 10 minutes or less, that's a win for them and for the employer too.
Okay, I'm looking at some of the rates that you're trying to target. And the one for, 2 bedrooms, 1.5 bath at 80% AMI, $14.75 a month. That's affordable.
That's aggressive. I wish it could be lower, and those are the maximum allowable rents for 80% AMI. There's no way around that if you look at the pro forma. If we lowered it, we're going to have to continue to raise more capital. And it comes to the point where how much more capital are you going to have to raise before you can't get the project funded? I mean, it just takes longer and longer and longer. I know in Frankfurt, we could go up to 120% AMI. And most of the applicants did not have income that could support $14.75, $15.50 a month. We reduced them to a certain degree so that it was within 30% of their gross income when they applied to us.
Do you have any sorts of assurances from Crystal Mountain that they're gonna provide employment that could support these rates?
Our market study does. I could share that with you, that shows that there is demand in
Thank
that.
you.
Yeah, but no, that's a good point, because the absorption of the units and the demand of that price point is important. You also have to realize that two people in a 2-bedroom apartment, income earners, could easily be making $75,000 to $80,000 per year. So splitting that expense does happen. The other side of the coin is Huntington Foundation has been really open to donating grant funds to us for what we call a rental subsidy account. So if we have somebody that's not quite making enough to be in 30% of their gross income to afford $14.75 per month, we'll kick in $200 a month on their behalf from this foundation so that they stay within that percentage.
And just to be fair, because there could be people listening to this, there are units, 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath at 30% AMI at $459 a month, and 2 bedrooms, 1.5 bath at 50% AMI at $890 a month. I just don't want that $475 to be out there, as these are the rents across the board
Right.
for each of these. So it looks like 4 buildings, 8 units apiece. Is
Correct.
that correct?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Best of luck. I appreciate your effort in our area.
Yeah, thank you.
Will they all be 2-bedroom or?
Yep, they are.
All 32 of them?
All 32.
Okay.
Yeah, we tried 3 bedrooms in some of the rural areas and they just are hard to rent up. Really, somebody in a 3-bedroom should probably have a home in that sense. Really, the demand is in studios and 1-bedrooms. 2 bedrooms fit that bill for one person with a extra room, and invariably a roommate could take it, or a couple, 2 professionals, 2 teachers. It's really a flex unit. But 1-bedrooms and studios are the key, but they're very land intensive. We feel like the 2-bedroom model's the go-to for us. And we build them all the time, so we know exactly how to build them as efficiently as we can. If you can imagine about $180,000 per unit hard cost, just the hard cost for $180,000 for about 1,000 square foot. That's less than $200 per square foot. That's unachievable unless you do it like we do, in-house, cookie cutter, and know what we're doing.
Say that again. 1,000 square feet.
Right.
Each unit, $180,000 with your subsidized costs.
Hard cost. Yep.
Wow.
Yep. Yeah, no, I mean, we pay a construction manager. We buy all of our building materials at tax exempt, right? We're a nonprofit, so 6% right off the top of whatever we purchase in building materials. We don't have that tax liability. We know how to do it. Now, you add up the land, you add up the reserves, and all the other things, we're at 240,000 or 250,000 per unit.
Per unit.
Right. And
Are you bound to use, there's a rule about having to go by union rates.
Union scale.
prevailing wage or union scale,
Yeah.
Davis-Bacon, that only comes into play when you are using federal grant dollars.
Okay.
Yeah, and we did have that in the village of Frankfurt. We probably paid an extra $70,000 in wages, which is fine. I mean, the guys deserve it. I think we would rather not have to pay those wages, but in fact, our area is closer to prevailing wage than most areas downstate anyway, so it's not that big of a hit.
Okay.
Yeah.
John, just as a comparison, I'm consulting for a group out of Muskegon right now,
Hmm.
$300 a unit.
Yep. Yep. It's the case. There's no way around it.
Yeah, right. Square footage, I mean, 300 group.
Yep.
Yeah, it's, there is no way around it.
No, and some of those bigger tax credit projects are heavy with fees to accountants, architects, and compliance and scrutiny by, you wouldn't believe the number of people. We're doing a project in Elk Rapids that's a tax credit project, and that is closer to 300,000 per unit. These smaller scale, non-tax credit projects by a local developer is really the best, lowest cost option. And I think I think we're lucky to have Homestretch in the community. There, it's a rare thing to have.
We're not only lucky to have Homestretch, but quite frankly, we're lucky that you're running it. Because you understand what you're doing and you had predecessors that didn't, quite frankly, so good for you. And then what a lot of people don't understand is that you're required to have these reserves there, which means that you even have to come up with more money.
Right.
Than maybe someone in the private sector wouldn't have to, although it makes it a more stable project.
Yeah, and dealing with private sector, most developers will take $1 or $2 million or 15% of the total development cost in a developer fee. We could on this development take up to $1.6 million in developer fee. We're only taking about 250,000, and that covers our costs. You can imagine 2 years ago, we started this at the local level, and now and it'll probably be 5 years till this is completely built out. So all of that staff time and everything over 250,000 is about right per project. And we'll take less if we have to get it up and running.
But are you deferring any of your fee?
Right now, we're not. We
Okay.
still have that option. We can continue to defer it. It's a sort of a balancing act. If we have to lop off 50,000 to make it work, we'll do it.
Just curious, I know moving costs for folks who do find housing can be deterring. Some of it, I think in Michigan, you can charge up to 1.5% rent for a security deposit. Is that the standard for these apartments? Is it first month's rent plus a security deposit or first and last? What
First month's rent plus the same security deposit.
matching the first month's rent?
And that is actually, to some people, it's a tough
Yeah.
thing to come up with. If you're paying $1,000 a month, you have to have an additional 1,000. You know, you can imagine the barrier of getting into a single family home when you purchase it. So this is the lowest barrier to getting into housing, but you know, Father Fred Foundation, others, they really do help. And our property manager, Leah, she'll actually call around and ask and see if she can help the tenant with the funding on behalf of the tenant, because we want to get them in the units. And I said, Leah, that's really nice of you. I'm sure you have other things to do. And she goes, well, I really want them to move in. It's sort of endearing.
It's not uncommon for an agency to supply that deposit. Bacon does that locally.
Yeah.
even.
Yeah.
In some churches, et cetera. Any other questions or comments? Gary?
Can you explain how the water system? I have no idea what Crystal Mountain has, if they have their own
Right.
wells or,
They do.
and we're just gonna hook on from there or.
Right. They have their own private, well, it's sort of their own mini municipal system for the whole resort, but they have plenty of capacity and plenty of flow if we run an 8-inch main. Pretty good size main. Yeah, and it's 750,000 just to run the main and the ductile iron and hook it up to a room within. We're gonna have to build a room attached to one of the units to house all the apparatus, and then a distribution system from there. It's not just for potable water though; it's for fire hydrants. So this is, you know, we're not sprinklered within the units because they're townhouses, but we have to have fire hydrants. So we're actually building sort of our own municipal system off of theirs. Yeah.
Does it
They
support
did
their own?
$1.
That was just to make it contractually legal.
Thank you.
Sure.
And the property supports their own septic and drain fields. They don't need a municipal, like a mini municipal sewer system.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Yes. And that is actually less expensive than
Yeah.
if you were to hook up to a municipal and pay $60 a month for water and then another $40 a month for sewer. We can amortize that leach field and that septic tank over 40 years. And then you even charge the tenant for it. And that's what we do at Vineyard View in Sutton's Bay. They don't pay a water and sewer. We have private well, private septic. Tricks, lots of little tricks.
Other questions or comments? John, thanks for being here. Just hold just for a second. So could I get a motion for a letter of support for the Homestretch Nonprofit Housing Corporation project known as Crystal Commons, allowing the chair to sign?
NISO moves.
Second. Carrie seconds. Questions or comments then? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. John, you want to take this with you?
I do. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Copy.
Oh.
When you take it, yeah. Just so we have it for the record.
Good luck.
Yes.
Thanks for being here today. Yep, you bet.
Thanks, John.
Very good. All right, if we could, Corey, I think you're next. I'll let you.
So we're on to the Central Dispatch Advisory Committee bylaws. After the Central Dispatch Advisory Committee has reviewed the bylaws, they come to the board for confirmation of approval. We did include the tracked changes version in your packet, so you can see that the majority of the changes are quite housekeeping in nature. But I will allow Corey to ask or to answer any questions that you may have regarding some of the more substantive changes.
Excuse me, Corey Ellis, 911 Director, Benzie County. So yeah, kind of like Katie said, a lot of this is housekeeping stuff. What triggered this was a change in one of the members on the board. Tim Markey was on that board in his fire chief capacity, and the group of fire chiefs requested a change of that person, and so now it's Chief Mike McGurr. And so when we did that, I kind of read through this just to make sure we were following our own rules, and it wasn't clear to me on how we should proceed. So I reached out to the attorney for some guidance on that. He provided some guidance and some updates in the bylaws on how to make that happen. So that's what triggered this. It wasn't just, hey, let's update our bylaws because we can, sort of thing. There was an event that caused a review of it. And happy to answer any questions.
I do have a question. 2.12. I do think you need a word in there. And it doesn't, I just want to make sure it reads the way you want it to. Properly convened meeting refers to a board or committee meeting where a quorum of 5, I think you need an of the appointed members are present. And which was the subject of 5 days prior written notice. It's just a little, when I read it, I went, is this really how you want to say this? It was a little unclear. 2.12, I walked away from going, mention it and see if they might want to tweak it. And I think they need a word.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, I
offer
think
that.
the of makes sense.
Yeah.
For sure. As far as the other part of it, I kind of, I wouldn't say I went hands off, but it was a suggestion from the attorney, I guess I would say, is that that's how it should read. So
Okay, and I don't think you need an apostrophe after days.
And had of it.
Right, it doesn't, it's not possessive, yeah.
I'm missing.
Well, there is an of, there needs to be a second one.
yeah, it should be of 5 of.
A quorum of 5 of the appointed members.
Good catch. Thank you.
Anything else, Rhonda?
No, other than that, it read well.
Thanks for taking the time to look at that. Other comments or questions? If not, I'd look for a motion.
Roll-offs, make a motion.
Thank you.
Davis, second.
Thank you. Again, questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
All right.
Okay.
Those opposed, same sign. Why don't you hang right in there a second, Corey? Katie, want to introduce the next one?
Yeah, so the next one on the agenda is a budget amendment regarding central dispatch. We did this same similar budget amendment last year. As you know, central dispatch is given restricted funds for training. And then he does send his folks to training. And so the idea is to reimburse the central dispatch fund with those restricted training funds for the time that was spent on training of his staff. This is again housekeeping like it was last year. It's just a matter of moving the money from fund to fund, and that needs board action.
Questions or comments? There's none. I'd look for a motion.
Read it, that the Board of Commissioners authorizes the budget amendment in the total amount of $5,116.76 from the dispatch training fund to the central dispatch fund. And further, that an adjustment be approved to move funding into the central dispatch wage line to reimburse wage costs associated with training.
Thank you, Gary. Can I get support?
It will second.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Markey is absent. Nye,
Yes.
Roloff.
Yes.
Sauer,
Yes.
Grigg. Yes. Davis.
Yes.
Not.
Yes. All right, thank you. Katie?
The next item in your packet is related to EMS and the ambulances. Tom King is here to kind of talk about what this means. What we're doing is purchasing wireless routers for the ambulances. The ones that are currently in the system are end of life. And this would replace all of those end of life devices for our ambulances specifically. And this was a budgeted item.
Anything you want to add, Tom?
No, just that these, as it was already mentioned, these are end of life and need to be replaced, and they're not cheap. So here we are asking for approval so I can get those purchased and installed.
Maybe explain what they do.
Communications.
Yeah, so these are kind of a little bit in my wheelhouse, it's just kind of how in the past, that's how they've come through. Anyway, so these devices are specific, they're inside the car, it's a wireless modem that uses cellular connection to provide access mainly to CAD, but also to the internet for any other resources, specifically on the EMS side. What's the program called? Pulsera, to report to the hospitals and other things like that for their report writing, et cetera. It provides them a hotspot in their ambulance is the easiest way to explain.
So are we at a phase where these are just disposed of when you say end of life, or is there anything that can be done where they're refurbished and handed to another entity like we have done with some equipment?
So some of these, they could be provided in a capacity that is not connected back to our network. Some of them are truly end of life, and the reason they're replaced is they're a security issue. There's no updates available to them. They cannot be firmware updated or anything, so they have to go bye-bye. But they could be utilized in another capacity somewhere else, as long as it doesn't connect to our network. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but
So,
for my sake of it, no, they're going to be disposed of. We don't have a purpose for them.
Well, I'm gonna do a follow-up then, similar to what we asked the last time we were talking about replacing equipment. I know you don't have anything in mind now, but I think that the last time we went through this gyration, we reached out to some other agencies and actually got a great response of we would take that equipment from you, even knowing that they had to spend money to upgrade it. Is this the same situation?
So they wouldn't be able to upgrade it at all. It's from a software side or from a manufacturer side. They don't provide any updates. I think it would be very similar to explain as our Microsoft Windows 11
Version.
challenge, I'll call it right now.
Okay,
The vendor themselves or the manufacturer themselves will not provide an update. There may be an opportunity that an entity wants them knowing that, and we will broadcast that out if anybody wants it. But I would be real surprised if anybody picks up on them.
that's where I was going with it.
makes no sense for somebody to take that because then they will be vulnerable. This
Right.
doesn't make any sense to try to refurbish these.
Okay. Are they only used for emergency services? Is that?
No. There could be other uses for them. All it is a mobile router. You have a router in your home, a Wi-Fi router. That's basically what this is. It gets its internet connection from the cell service.
Okay,
So there's a wide use for them, but everybody, use that cautiously. Everybody would take the same approach as Commissioner Trigg just said. These are security issue. I don't want this.
I get it. But if there's I'll use the expression recycle. There's a chance to recycle them. Someone has a need for them. Let's make sure they know they're available.
Yeah.
I thought that was a great idea. Wasn't mine, but last time it was a great idea and we got nice response from that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions or comments? I think are we still looking for a motion?
Mhm.
Make a motion that the Board of Commissioners authorizes the purchase of 5 wireless routers for replacement in the ambulances from Grand Traverse Mobile Communications in the not to exceed amount of $11,440 with funds available in the 210 ambulance fund.
Very good. Can I get-
Roll off some support.
Thank you, Bob. Comments or questions? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Nye,
Yes.
Roloff.
Yes.
Sauer,
Yes.
Brigg,
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Janat,
Yes.
Markey is absent.
Katie?
The next item, we're back to dispatch. All day today, we're talking dispatch mostly. It's kind of funny. So what you have in front of you today is a request to move forward with what is called an AI skill lab. Corey is here to answer any questions regarding this. We know that there's a lot of conversation around AI in the world right now and, you know, the benefits or the drawbacks of it all. Typically, an expenditure of this amount of money would not come before the Board of Commissioners because it's within our spending authorities. However, one is contractual, so that does have to come before the board, and it is something new and will catch buzz because AI is the buzzword today. So I'll let Corey kind of go into what this does and what this offers for our staff. I will say it's an enhancement for our staff's training, and that's why it's being explored and asked about. But I'll let Corey kind of go into further detail on that.
Sure. So this solution was originally offered to us when we onboarded last year this month, probably almost to date, with our emergency medical dispatching. At that time, the solution was very clunky. A couple of my staff watched a demonstration of it, and none of us liked it. So we just put it aside. They reapproached me a few months ago and said, hey, we revamped it. We looked at it again. We evaluated it again, and it is much better now. So what this solution provides is for medical calls only. It provides us the ability to interact with a computer, an AI voice, to simulate a call. And it's not the same as talking to Siri on your phones or having the Word document read out loud to you. It's really close to a human's voice and emotion and things. They will get very mad at you if you ask the same question or you ask the wrong question or you say the wrong thing. It throws that emotion into it. So it really tries to simulate a real call. It is not in any form changing our operations. It's a training tool only. It will also, so it'll work for us for our training employees in our training program. They can simulate taking calls that are not real and live, but they feel real and live. It also allows us to use this system for continuing education for our current staff that are already certified in this, to have more practice on maybe some high stress, low incident types of calls, such as CPR would be a good example. Thankfully, we don't do CPR every day, but when we need to do it, we need to be perfect in it. And so this allows us to practice that with no liability or no jeopardizing the level of service for the community.
Questions or Kate?
Yeah, so my question is so then does this score you or is this is just practice?
This is just practice, but it will score you. And it also gives you, this is one of the major changes that they made that we really like, is it gives you immediate feedback. And so this program, our emergency medical dispatch, is scripted. And so if you choose the wrong option, it says, nope, try again, wrong option. So it provides you that immediate feedback of you need to go a different route with this. But then also at the end, it gives you a score. And so you know how well you did. Maybe you got 100%, which is great, or some areas you could improve in.
So Corey, is this used during the duration of employment or just for onboarding? I mean, my thought is that perhaps you don't get cardiac arrest calls frequently and you get, kind of out of practice with how to deal with them. Is this used for the duration of employment, these skill building?
That would be the intent, yes. So we would My intent, if this were approved and how it would be delivered in our department, would be very heavy in the training phase to get people up to speed. But then it will carry on, and there will be monthly assignments, is what they're called, for all staff to complete to stay proficient. So yes, it would carry through your entire tenure.
How currently do you train? This is such a valuable tool. I'm a little worried about AI from some of the things I've heard, and
Yep.
Elon Musk said the other day it can take over. I'm really scared of it.
Yeah, so this is only a training solution. There's a lot of buzz right now in a neighboring county. This has absolutely nothing to do with it. It's not even an apple to apple. It would be an apple to a potato. They're not even the same. Completely different. What this does is it takes away the need for the trainer to be solely focused with the trainee and play what we call in the industry the ring ring game. Ring ring 911, where's your emergency sort of thing. It takes that out and it provides a higher level of training because they're interacting with more real life what will happen. You're not going to see the person that you're taking the call from. You're going to be on the phone and that's all you get. There's no visual to it. So that's kind of the enhancement to it. And it
Is
provides more
anybody-
variety. What's that?
Anybody local running it?
In
now?
the state, yes, not close to us, no.
Not close to us.
No.
Somebody that you can reach out to. and
Yeah.
talk.
Yep. So I did that before I brought it here and it was all positive feedback. Nobody had anything bad to say about it.
My concern is that, and my question for you is AI changes, there's progress being made in this stuff. I'm a little hesitant about the length of the commitment, signing on for, I believe it's 3 or 4 years. For this, can this board consider approving it for a year and then getting feedback from you of how it was utilized and if you want to move on?
Sure, yeah, and I
Continue
think
the-
that was kind of built into it that way. That we can break this out, or we can break this off at any time that we want.
Right, so,
The
but
only, go ahead.
it was presented as opting in for a duration of years with the ability to opt out. I'm saying, can we opt in and then decide if we want to continue?
Yeah,
instead of-
absolutely. So
Okay.
the only part that's really considered contractual is the pricing structure with it. So they priced it based on our current other contract with this service for emergency medical dispatch. If we opt into this even right now as it stands, and after the first year, this doesn't meet our needs anymore, we opt out of it. There's no obligation beyond that.
It's showing $2,500 for 3 years.
No, it's
No,
annually.
each.
It's each
every
year. Yep.
So you as the board, if that's what you wanted to consider as the board, just doing 1 year and then having Corey come back and give some sort of update as to how it's going. You could read off the motion and stop at 24, 25 and then skip down to contingent upon availability of appropriated funds.
It occurred
you
to
could
me, and
skip out
maybe,
that piece.
maybe the other board members are comfortable with that kind of commitment, because it locks in a price, right? Are we facing the same old, if we don't lock in at this price, it could cost us more down the road?
There's potential for that, absolutely. It seems as if every service always goes up,
Yeah.
lock a pricing, so.
Notice that?
I think the fact that it gets reapproved each year based on available budget
Mhm.
in itself means each year we're gonna be looking at this.
Mhm.
It's a small item and it could get past us, I get that. But given the challenges that you're having in your department financially right now, $2,500 may mean something at some point, so
Mm.
it may not just be the effectiveness. One of the advantages I see in this versus using a human instructor is that you can do this at somebody's leisure. They can do their own training.
Yep, absolutely. It provides us a lot better opportunity, it makes it more flexible for us. Absolutely.
How often would you be using 5 of them at once?
5 of them, what do you mean?
Well, it's-
You see
the
where
quantities are all 5. Is that,
quantities are,
Oh, no, the
I'm not
quantity is
seeing
one down at the quote. If you scroll down, the quantity is one. I think you're looking at the routers still, and that was fine.
oh, yep, my bad.
yeah, so the
mind.
quantity is 1. Where it talks about 1 to 5 positions, that's just our level. We have 4 911 positions. So that's how they do their licensing, is based on that. But it's unlimited use, unlimited people, unlimited concurrent use, all of that is just unlimited. So,
Other questions or comments? If not, would someone be comfortable in making this motion?
I would.
Please.
Trig moves that the Board of Commissioner authorizes the procurement of the Priority Dispatch AI Skill Lab training solution in the amount of $1,465.75 for fiscal year 2024-25 and $2,500 annually for fiscal years 2025 through 2026, 2026 through 2027, and 2027 through 2028, contingent upon the availability of appropriated and approved funds within the central dispatch budget for each respective fiscal year, and a determination of continued need and justification by the central dispatch director.
Well, we've got a motion on the table. We need to act on that first. What's your suggestion, Gary? What do you want to do?
I wanted, my suggestion is what Katie recommended.
Try for 1 year.
Yeah, try it for a year.
I believe this language allows us to do that.
Yeah, but then we don't lock in the pricing. But by us, this is just my opinion, by us constricting, right? We are constricting his ability to assess and lock in a price. So if we do it as it stands, then he has the autonomy, and so do we, when it comes to budgeting, to say, and so I don't think this hurts us in any way by saying, let's lock this in for 3 years, because we have subsequent power to say, no, it doesn't fit in the budget, or he says, nope, this isn't working for us. That's how I see it.
You and I view it the same way. In order to at least get this on a discussion or on the table, I'm going to support your motion.
Yeah,
Okay,
it
now we
does
can
still say
continue the
that it's
discussion.
contingent on availability and
Back
appropriate.
a bit of the funds, but we're still, they're asking for an annual subscription. I don't look at it the same way you two are looking at it.
Well, okay, well, let's go back to, let's go back to the people that are negotiating the contract. So the question is at the end of this year, you said to us, really not getting anything as much from it that I thought I would, or we simply can't afford it next year. Are we obligated to the years that are identified in this motion?
No, sir. And I'm not trying to be rude. I'm trying to pull up the email from the guy so I could read exactly what he said as well.
Yeah, please do.
Give me just a second here. There's a few emails back and forth, so it might take me a hot second here to find that correct answer, but I did ask that question.
So if in fact it does get confirmed, Gary, we still have that option. Even though we're looking at multiple years, they're giving us, apparently locking us in on a rate for a commitment that really is only a year-to-year commitment.
Yeah. And I did find that email if you would like me to read it.
Please.
What he said. The gentleman's name is John Stones. He's the account manager for the Great Lakes region for Priority Dispatch. And he said, here's the quote for the AI Skill Lab. I have it to match your renewal dates for your ESP maintenance. That's our emergency medical dispatch. It's just their terminology, and match your pricing agreement dates through 2028. I can go out 1 more year if you want to lock in pricing. This gives you the ability to lock in pricing for up to 5 years where you are billed annually, but with the option to opt out if you choose for any renewal year. And so I did not extend beyond what our current contract was because I felt like that made it a little more muddy, and let's just keep everything on the same timeline. So we went with what our other contract is. So that's why this one doesn't have the 5th year.
Does that make you more
But I'm happy to go either direction. I'd be perfectly fine with coming up
Yeah,
every
I
year and
think-
having the conversation to ask for approval, or just handling that through the budgeting process, or however you guys
He's
would
gonna
see
come
that
back
fit.
to us every year. Sign a contract.
Well, then let me ask the question differently, but it's been asked already once. What's the advantage of signing a contract that identifies multiple years, but really only obligates us a year at a time? Are we getting a price break if we had just versus if we just did a year to year?
It's hard for me to say yes, because I don't know what they would do with their pricing structure, but I think historically with every other service that we pay for, they increase that price every year. So I do see it as more of a benefit on our end to lock in that pricing and hold them accountable. This is what you told us for the next however long, and this is what you're going to provide to us. Whereas if we do it annually, we're essentially renegotiating every year, and that could have its challenges as well.
So we're getting the benefit of both worlds.
I
We're
think,
not long-term obligating ourselves, but we're locking in. We can now predict what the cost is going to be each of these years.
yes, sir.
Other questions or comments? If not, I'm going to ask you to do a roll call. We'll see where we're at.
Roloffs.
Yes.
Sauer,
Yes.
Trigg,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Janat.
Yes.
Markey is absent. Nye.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, can't
Thanks
wait
for the
first
information, Ray.
report.
Yeah, absolutely.
Coming back. Thank you.
So the next item on our agenda is Commissioners' Committee assignments. You recall in January, you supported me in taking off up to 13 of the committees that we had previously been assigned to and agreed that we'd come back to this in 6 months to talk about whether we should continue with this strategy or review the need to go back to these agencies as a liaison. The ones that we would be discussing today, which was, you're going to find it on, I think, page 3, is Building Authority, Benzie Conservation District, Maples, Road Commission, Human Services Collaborative, Airport, Benzie Senior Resources, Domestic Violence Task Force, and Land Bank Authority. Those are the ones that we discontinued, or I'll say suspended. Tell me, do you believe that this strategy makes sense for this commission, knowing that the objective is to bring these agencies in 2 to 4 times a year to give us a report that we all can hear? Do you think that the agency feels like they're missing something by us not being in attendance? Do you think that we're missing something by not having somebody physically at the table? And I'm going to walk around the room with this. Gary, you were as passionate about it as anyone in terms of what we were doing. What's your thoughts today?
I still feel that as a commissioner and this body needs to be represented at these meetings. I would like them to show up too on their own. I've actually solicited repeatedly with Maples and they started doing it. I just feel that the communication between both entities have to be there. To me, it hasn't worked out as much as I would like to see. I know you think they only should show up quarterly. Well, there's a lot of stuff happen in those time spans, so I'm in favor of going back some of these. You see one, I'm not.
And depending on where we go with it, I'd talk about each one individually.
And I
Rhonda, I'm going to turn to you. What's your thoughts on this?
I appreciate the fact that this board is willing to try new things. I understand the thought process behind it. I have continued to attend. I had 2 meetings removed that I was assigned to. I've continued to attend those meetings. And I've put some thought into this. And I think moving forward, we should give those entities that don't have representation the opportunity to address this board and ask for it with a reason behind why they want it. And we decide as a group whether, I don't think as a blanket, we should reinstate all of them. I've heard feedback. I think there are some that meet more than once a month, which seems a little bit overkill, I think, because we know that these are per diem as well. There are other ones that I've heard things like they really like me there. I'm not sure that serves a purpose. I've heard other entities say we miss having a commissioner on board and getting their feedback and be able to give input. I just think on a case by case basis, whether it's these meetings that were removed or other entities, we stopped attending the school board meetings. If a school wanted a commissioner there and wanted a report and wanted the information that happens at the school board meeting to come back to this board, I just think there needs to be a process in place for any entity to say, we would like a commissioner at our meetings. And then we evaluate on an individual basis, their reasoning behind that, and we vote like we do on everything else. Whether it be for a short period of time or just indefinitely, as some of them that we have. That's my 2 cents.
You want the entities to reach back to.
I think they want to say, we want a commissioner here, and why they do.
Bob, your thoughts?
I honestly think it's important for us to have a presence, and it gives those committees the opportunity to come in front of us for the same reason. Because they're doing something for the county, they're doing something good for the county. And for them to be represented here and us to be represented there, I think it's important to the community.
Want to follow up on that?
Yeah, I just think there needs to be an understanding too. If we do assign a commissioner, there needs to be a report given about, I have heard some entities say, we're fine without a commissioner here. We don't understand why they were attending in the first place. So that's why the individual basis thing makes sense, but then it has to be reiterated that if you're being paid to go to these meetings, you need to tell us what happened there. You need to be reporting on what you gleaned, some takeaways from those meetings.
So I'm gonna piggyback and say, not only do you need to have a report, but you need to go.
Yes.
Christie, your thoughts?
I really appreciate your thoughts on the whole, hey, let us know if you want a commissioner to come. You know, as somebody who has a job and a family, it's difficult for me sometimes to juggle all that to go to all these meetings. But on the other hand, oh my gosh, what I get back from these meetings is so helpful and I feel so much more connected. So it's for me, it's a dual-edged sword. You know, it means, you know, I'm not with my family, but it also means I'm more connected and that's helpful for me. On the other hand, you know, it's hard for me to go to some of these. So in my district, and I don't believe we talked about the lighthouse, the Point Betsy Lighthouse. Point Betsy Lighthouse.
That should be one of them.
Mm-hmm. Maples, and the airport are specifically in my district, and there is basically all the committees in my district have been removed. Could I go to them? I could, but then I sacrifice something else. And so for me, being mandated is easier for me to justify going to some of these. So there's that. I could also go to their website and look up their minutes, but I don't do that either. I have a hard enough time, you know, getting my reports together and doing what I'm doing. So I know it sounds like I'm complaining, but it's dual edged for me. I see the importance. I would really like to add more of these back. But it also is a sacrifice on my part.
So you're right, I missed Platte River Watershed and Point Betsy, but they are in the list as part of the discussion, and we'll come back around to those individuals in a moment. So Dave, it's a new process, although it's, you know, you've been involved in government for some time, so probably not a surprise to you, we do these outside visits. What's your reaction, not necessarily to these individual agencies, but about these liaison positions? What's your thoughts on that?
I liked the liaison positions. I liked, you know, as a township supervisor, I liked having a county commissioner into there to pass on it, because I would Zoom the county commissioner meetings, but half the time I was doing other stuff. Whereas having somebody dedicated to say, hey, this is what the county's doing, or, you know, this is what the county can do for you with this problem, I thought was important. And then just the idea of county oversight. We appoint these boards just to send them off to the winds to do their own thing, could get out of control. Whereas having county commissioner at the meetings does provide some oversight.
So it's clear what I'm hearing you say is that if the agency agrees that they would like us to be there, we're agreeing that we would be willing to have a physical presence. Christie, to your concern, you only get assigned to committees that you agree to, okay? This is your first year and we took 13 of them out, so you really haven't felt that selection process yet. But Rhonda had shared with me this strategy a week or so ago about reaching out to the agencies that we've identified, not all of them, because we still are going to continue with those, and asking them if you would like us to reinstate a liaison, can you make a case for it? I'm more comfortable with approaching it that way. And with your permission, Katie and I would craft a letter and send it out underneath my name. And then let's see what kind of response we get. And we give them, I don't know, what's fair, 30 days to respond?
30 to 45.
And I do want to reiterate, I do think it's important that other entities who may have never had commissioner representation or maybe newly formed and want commissioner representation, they're open to asking the question as well. We're as a body going to decide if a commissioner would be reassigned or assigned. But I don't want to close that door to only the entities that we've done in the past. If there is a group that wanted one of us there, I think we should consider that. And I do want to point out, just for the benefit of people listening, we have never removed the idea that your commissioner should be attending your township or your village meetings. That's a given that we should be at those.
In fact, there's still a number of meetings that we're attending, even beyond the townships and villages, that we have a presence there. I do like the idea that they come in and do a presentation, like Benzie Senior Resources. We get to hear the same message from them. But it's, so with your permission, we'll craft a letter to send out initially just to this group. Let's see what kind of response we get back from them. But if you'd indulge me for a moment, and each of you has this in front of you, I'd like to walk through these agencies that we just talked about and make sure that we want to address all of them. So like the building authority, that's on an as-needed basis. I've been assigned to that. I haven't had to go to a meeting for that for 2 years. So no harm, no foul, assigning somebody to that with the understanding there's nothing going on there anyway.
It even exists.
Well, yes, it does, but it's, you feel differently about it?
Yeah, multiple attorneys have expressed to me that because it has been dormant and because the county has their own bonding authority and various other reasons, it's essentially a null and void committee.
So we could take that off.
Correct.
Okay. Anybody object to that based on that explanation? All right, so that's gone. The Conservation District. Evan was the one that went to that. Did anybody back him up when he wasn't there? Anybody know enough about this organization to say whether we should invite them to send us a response?
Because I serve and attend the Water Smart Land Use Committee, I don't think they would be opposed to not having representation on the Conservation District side of their meetings, but I don't want to speak for them. I think we send them a letter and ask. I think their responses will likely be, we're fine without it.
And maybe that's just true with all of them, huh? Instead of me sitting here trying to cherry
Yeah,
pick.
I think at the end of the day, leaving it up to them requesting one of us being there. I mean, but I think maybe go through it, because we just came to a conclusion that I didn't anticipate on the building authority. And had we not had this discussion, would we have removed that committee? So I think I think this is important to go through just briefly and touch on each of them.
So the next one would be the Maples. Any discussion there? Road Commission. The Human
Let me ask a question about that one. That's the one that meets twice a month.
Right.
Is that correct? Do you see a benefit, Gary, to attending that one twice a month?
To be honest with you, and you could limit that to one
One meeting,
meeting a month,
okay.
pick and choose, but it depends on what happens. I did go to one recently. Somebody's always coming in and want to close the road down, so.
But
I
they,
enjoyed- Yeah,
they specifically have said to you in the last 6 months, we would like to see you come back.
well, they asked me what the hell I was doing there to begin with.
Oh, well, that's a little confusing. We want you to come back, but why are you here?
That was our friend Joe.
I get you. Human Services Collaborative. Now, I just want to point out that we chose not to even support them financially directly in our budget process. I personally think that we're opening the wrong door if we now send them a letter saying, by the way, do you want us back? Because if we were to decide to do that, I think we got to fund it. I know that we all don't feel the same about that, but
I think with having members serve on that committee or affiliations with the health department and central wellness and that anything that happens that we should be aware of, we would glean from those meetings.
Right, and being on the health board, I have yet to see that show up there, give us anything. You'd have to pin Michelle down to make her talk about it. Oh, they go, and I know they support financially. Personally, I would like
does anybody have
The
objections?
health board or the Board of Appeals?
This is the Human Services Collaborative body.
Oh.
a collaborative.
It's like a 26-member agency, and
Mm-hmm.
does anybody have objections if we just,
I don't know. I don't know a lot about the Human Services Collaborative, but you know, there's points there, particularly in Grow Benzie, right? I think they have a compost, a community compost thing. So I don't know if that intersects there or not, but that would be interesting to me because, you know, materials management, we're looking for, someplace to compost, with our 40% diversion, and that contact, I think, in that vein is important.
and you understand, you can still go to their meetings.
Mhm.
Okay.
I know, but I've also explained my double-edged sword.
I get that. I get that. I'm, you know what? I'm not gonna respond to that.
Yeah, I know.
So what I'm hearing by consensus is there's no problem. We're gonna strike that one. Okay, Airport Authority, anybody want to discuss that?
I think we need somebody at the airport authority. I do believe things have improved. But we need a commissioner that's assigned to the airport authority that has the voting. Nothing against Corey, but I think it's either time to move on or to me, a concern.
Well,
I don't see where we have a voice.
I think did you want to say something? For my purposes, unless they've already agreed to make sure that our liaison is sitting in that room when they're having closed door sessions, I don't know why we're there. Because that's where we got hoodwinked before. Is that we didn't even know there was a lawsuit coming. Because they didn't feel compelled to have one of the owners in the room for that discussion. So should we send them a letter? And because I think we are in a better place. Quite frankly, I think under the current management, they're gonna show up here 3-4 times a year anyway.
If she's been really, but
And
Okay.
perhaps that is an option too, to maybe address in the letter. If you would like to opt to not have a commissioner and make a commitment to attend the meetings, I mean, that's a valuable response, I think. No, we'd rather not, take you up on your offer for a commissioner, but we intend to attend monthly or quarterly to keep you abreast of what's happening at our meetings.
Partly what caused me to travel down this road is there's a couple of agencies that I went to. They could have cared less about my report. They just wanted to talk about what their business was. And I could tell that I was almost an interruption for them. So,
Well, not every meeting that I attend, I'm not required to give a report at, you know, the land bank or a couple of the other ones that I attend, but I do gather valuable information that I bring back here.
okay, that's fair. Benzie Senior Resources, we will send you out a letter. Domestic Violence Task Force. Bob, you're the one that's assigned or was assigned to that.
Yep, been going for quite a few years. Yeah, used to be going for quite a few years. It's a bunch of agencies.
In the years that you've attended, though, you've never been able to share anything because of the nature of
Correct.
those meetings.
Yep. And the comments I've made to them casually is if they need something, then I'm the one that's able to talk to the board to see if we can provide that for them. Other than that, I don't have a word in what they're saying. But if I'm the tool that they need to use to get to the board, then so be it.
You'd like a letter sent to them then?
That we're staying.
Well, inviting them to apply to us to have a representative there.
Yeah.
Land Bank Authority, we've already spoken to that.
I would like them to get a letter, I think, with no inventory. It's a little difficult to justify a commissioner attending, but there are changes they are looking for a new direction. I do think they appreciate a commissioner being there. I think with the new EDC direction and their desire to have a connection with the land bank and the brownfield development, I would like a letter sent. They can make their own decision.
Platte River Watershed. Tim had been our representative there. You know, the one observation I want to make about this is if we go to Platte River Watershed, why aren't we going to Crystal Lake Watershed? What makes one more important than the other?
Money.
Or Heron Lake watershed, and you could name all of them.
Yeah, I mean, you could, to me, that's kind of picking winners and losers.
Yeah.
Does anybody have an objection if we scratch that? Don't hear anybody?
Tim's not here to defend it.
And the Lighthouse folks, again, Tim, I've been assigned to that. I found it absolute waste of my time. And I say that with all the greatest respect of what they do. But they clearly were interested in the Lighthouse and they didn't care what was going on at the county unless they needed something from us, which now they'll come if they need something, but. You want to say something?
I just think the nature of the relationship has changed.
Okay.
And they're requesting a collaborative, cooperative arrangement. And I guess if they don't want somebody at their meetings, you as chair are at least going to have to assign a commissioner to their effort.
Well, we're probably gonna do an ad hoc to
Okay.
that group anyway.
I think that's
Through the
important,
construction phase.
seeing their past.
But if the basic meetings are, you know, engineering plans and things like that, I've never attended one of their meetings, so I don't know the substance.
I think it would be nice for us to send them a letter and let them tell us.
Okay, since you're likely to be the one assigned to that, glad to do that.
Sweet.
I hear that all the time. So that pushes us through the list.
No, you missed one. You missed
What did I
the
miss?
water smart land use.
Water smart land use.
That was,
Where's it at?
That was
Should be on
added
there.
about.
it was
6 or 8
added,
months
It's
ago.
not on my
Right.
list here.
right, and they should receive a letter. They feel like they are very much in line with our master and strategic plan and what their efforts are, what they're trying to accomplish. They're talking about a contract with and I'm gonna say this wrong, Katie,
Cooligan.
Cooligo.
Cooligo and trying to develop zoning best practices that are uniform in our county. I mean, their work aligns with what we have said are things that are important to us, and they would very much like to receive a letter.
Art on the list, Watershed Coalition temporary appointment. That was what we initially dubbed it. And then later it became the Water Smart Land Use. So that's why it looks a little different in your list. I just copied and pasted
Yeah.
from timelines.
Very good. So Katie, over the next few days, knowing that you've got some personnel changes coming up, and we'll try to get together and put a letter together and get it sent out, and with your permission.
I hear we're gonna be together all day tomorrow, potentially, Art.
Oh,
So
yeah, right.
Gonna go ride horses.
Yeah, that's what I would do. Okay, so we'll work on that then. All right, anything else to be said about that before we leave that conversation?
Just thank you for bringing it up. Needed to be discussed and this group really think is the right way to go, so thanks.
But you know what, and right back at you guys, I really appreciate the support you gave me in January. We took a look at it, we gave it at 6 months, and as promised, we're back talking about it again.
Perfect.
I'm gonna ask you to jump on the next subject of, either you or Katie regarding study session timing.
Yeah. So right now our model is, our study session, our 1 meeting a month study session occurs at 12:30 or a half an hour after our last meeting adjourns.
whatever's later.
Yeah, and we discussed when we implemented that we were gonna revisit it, and I think it's silly just to channel Andy Miller from those days. I think that's silly. To have a meeting a half an hour after. It doesn't allow the public or people who want to attend the meetings to have any idea of when they need to be here. I'm not sure why we got away from a nice break in the middle to come back. We used to have our study session at 1 o'clock. I think we all commit the second and fourth Tuesdays to our commissioner duties. I just found that to be a little more seamless. Allowed people to go grab some lunch if they wanted to, instead of eating at our desks and trying to. So, we said we would revisit it, and we're doing that. I would be in favor of changing it again.
I think the 1:30.
Were we 1 or 1:30? We were 1:30, weren't we?
Yeah.
It does let the public know that's when the meeting is. And not that very many come, but maybe you would have something. Scott. I haven't a straight time. I've always felt. I think Evan wanted to get us out of here quicker.
Christie, your thoughts?
I tell you, some of our regular meetings have been lengthy. So yeah, it's,
You're talking about 5.5 hours? Not that I noticed.
right, but on the other hand, we're a county, we have a lot to discuss and we should discuss it, and we should give ourselves that time, so. I see it both ways, one, I'd like to give us enough time, to discuss what we need to discuss and not feel rushed and not feel like we can't say things and discuss things. Yet it is very important to let people know exactly when we're going to have our study session so that they can make the effort. And I do also feel that sometimes I don't have enough time to grab some, I'd like to toast and go get something and And anyway, so it is difficult. I don't know if we make our study session a little bit later.
Well, that was the way it was, in the past, the study session had been scheduled at 1:30. And the dissent was, well, if our meeting gets over at 11:30, there's 2 hours and we could just quote unquote, get this done. And, I've done it both ways now. I prefer the break in the middle. I prefer having an established time. If we do end early, we all have the freedom to go do what we need to do until the next meeting starts. Everybody knows when it's going to start, but there are those times when and it doesn't happen very often, but there were times when we were getting out at, almost 1 o'clock and needed to be back or be here at 1:30. That can happen as well. But I think it was more common that there was a significant break in the middle for folks to go get lunch and come back, reconvene.
You know, my commitment is to run these meetings as efficiently as I can. But the one thing that I will not bend on is we will be here until subject matters have been thoroughly addressed. Sometimes that takes longer. But we're here for the discussion. In fact, I suspect that when we don't have a discussion on something, but we take votes, some of the public might be wondering, how come there was no discussion? So we're not trying to prolong any meetings here, but I guess I'm just trying to defend that position of how long these meetings can run. Dave, this is all new to you, but what we're talking about is our study sessions used to start at 1:30.
Right.
And that was a time that 95% of the time we could easily meet. Versus 10:30, and that's, I'm sorry, no later than, well, you heard the description earlier. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I guess especially if we are discussing something that's important to the community, giving them a time of when it's going to be, where they just don't have to show up to this meeting, sit through it, and then wait 30 minutes. It makes more sense to have it at a set time, and I don't think having the meeting later necessarily will kill discussion, because we'll still push through till everything's discussed. It might just be an hour later in the day. I'm fine.
So Kim, I'm going to ask you to speak for the clerk's office. You guys are, you know, as affected as anybody is by this. One of the thoughts initially at 1:30 was it allowed your department to be able to relieve people for lunch.
That is correct. So Tammy typically doesn't eat on Tuesday. Depending on our court docket on a Tuesday, I'm in there all day long. Well, whether it's, you know, I get out and do orders and et cetera, I typically don't take lunch either on Tuesday, but we still have 3 people that we have to relieve, and it leaves us short. Some days are busier than others. I feel having a set time would be beneficial. That way, you know, she can go back, get a bite to eat, take care of some business, phone calls, emails, et cetera. Because we still have to run as the county clerk. So there are a lot of other duties besides just being here at a long period of time during that time. That's my opinion, but.
No, I appreciate it. That's important to me anyway. Katie, your thoughts?
I'm flexible either way. We make it work in our office. We're all sociopaths and we never take lunch, unfortunately, but we're trying to fix that. So either I will do whatever the board wants. I do know in the building it does help for the folks. So like Paula and Kelly are here, you know, they need to relieve their office to take lunches and they don't want to close their offices. And so if there is a set time, then folks can work their schedules around that. So we're not closing the offices for lunch. We try not to do that, even though the sign on the front door says most of us close for lunch. We really try to stay open and serve the public during those times. So it may be easier for folks who do tune in or are attending the meetings if they can plan on those set times.
And when I think of your responsibilities, you named a couple of other departments, but you know, you got central dispatch, you got emergency services, we got the sheriff's office.
Yep.
And you know, it's if they had a set time, and I'm glad that we tried it. It's always good to try something different.
Yeah.
But what I'm hearing said is that that we should go back to 1:30 as a start time for the study session. And is that currently documented in our board rules about the 10:30 or the 12:30 start time or half hour after the finish?
Yeah, so we have it not in our board rules, but it is on our annual meeting schedule. And so essentially what we need to do is amend the 2025 meeting schedule, and then we can update the language in there. It's just a 1 sentence that we can update.
So the motion would sound something like motion to amend
The annual meeting schedule to reflect the study session beginning at 1:30 consistently.
Okay.
Period.
Can I get somebody to make that motion?
Trig will move.
Go ahead.
Gary, you support then?
Yes. My question is, should we throw it in as the first Tuesday of the month too?
You could.
That in there?
So
Effective July?
yep. So it says all regular meetings will begin at 9 a.m. Study session meetings will be the second Tuesday of the month, beginning at 12:30 or 30 minutes after the conclusion of the board meeting. So we'll amend that sentence.
And we'll make it effective the first meeting in July.
Mhm.
Anything else? I'd like to do this by roll call.
Sauer,
Yes.
Grigg,
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Janat,
Yes.
Marky's absent. Nye,
Yes.
Roloffs.
Yes.
Okay, thanks for the discussion on that.
Kim, we'll need to publish it in the newspaper.
All right, if we can move on. Well, you know what? We are at 11 o'clock. Does anybody need a break?
Yes.
Actually, you look like you're scheduled. Why don't we
Empty.
make it 10 minutes, be back at quarter after?
Yes.
I know you're trying to say something.
Back in session.
Thank you, Rebecca. You're unmuted.
And we're back in session. How's that work for you?
All is well.
Lovely.
Very good. Next item on the agenda is a committee appointments. The Transportation Authority, we got 2 resignations that we need to act on. One is from Chris Kitchen, and without reading it in its entirety, his resignation is effective immediately, and I'd like to move on these individually if I could. So I'd entertain a motion to accept the Chris Kitchen's resignation with regrets.
I'd make that motion.
Thank you, Bob. Gary, thank you. Any questions or comments?
As a voting member on that board, should I sustain?
No.
No.
2 different roles.
Okay.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And again, the same motion for Sarah Miller, whose resignation is effective immediately. Gary,
I'll support.
thank you, Bob. Questions, comments? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. All right, it looks like we're at commissioner reports. And Rhonda, we're starting with you today.
Wait. There. Let me see. I attended the budget meeting with all of you. I had an agenda review. I attended the Central Wellness Board meeting for the first time since I have served on that board. We had a client, the parent of a client, attend with concerns about the federal Medicaid cuts that might be happening. And just really gave a personal testimony of her experience with Central Wellness and the care that they have provided for her son. And she was being asked if he could possibly take on a roommate or change his living situation to any degree based on the cuts that might be coming down the road. And she was just very compassionately sharing why that wasn't possible. It was very moving and had not had that happen before. The privatization or the bid out of the PIHP continues to be a topic with grave concern. There was actually a resolution that was passed regarding that. Well, this was regarding our urging the NMRE to take appropriate measures to assure fiscal solvency in response to fiscal destabilizing actions of other members of the NMRE. This privatization effort gained strength and a foothold because there are entities in our region, and you're reading about them in the paper, with $9 million shortfalls that make privatization look appealing. And so the resolution is telling the NMRE it's time to get their ducks in a row and act on making these folks more fiscally responsible. I attended the Village of Beulah meeting. They are moving forward with their discussions regarding a village manager. These talks are going on with the Village of Lake Ann, and the board supported continuation of those conversations. The ACO administrative consent order, the work order, stop work order has been lifted, so mowing can resume, the fencing can resume, work can start moving forward. And the adjusted ACO language will be put on their website very soon. And then the board voted for a reduction in their number of board members that was challenged by a resident, and a petition was provided with 10% of the voting people in Beulah. So this will now become a ballot issue. And they made a resolution to approve. Resolution approved for council reduction ballot language, which will then have to go to Tammy, our clerk, for approval, and it will be on the next election, whether that can happen. Benzonia Township reported that the Crystal Lake watershed lawsuit had been dismissed. That leaves 3 remaining suits to be resolved. They did move forward with a request from constituents to get speed signs. One of those is going to be put on Harris Road to slow people down going around Crystal Lake. The second one, they think maybe end up on Platte Road to slow them down as well. And they reported that they have 5 to 6 applicants for the new zoning administrator that they're seeking, as Jason Bernard no longer wants to have that role. That's all I have.
Because it was on the news. That the lawsuit was dropped against the township, Linsonia Township, as long as he was being removed from that position. Am I understanding that correct? The news correct?
I do not know. I would have to check to know if that was a condition of the
Because
withdrawing of the suit. All I know is the suit was withdrawn. I did not know, and I did not hear that report. Those two things are happening. The suit's been withdrawn and a new zoning administrator is being sought. I don't know if one is a condition of the other.
That's the way they portrayed it on the news. So I'm just asking. I thought maybe you would,
Okay, no,
because the Sun-Kissed Hills thing continues.
it does. And then there's another suit regarding the spot zoning of a marijuana establishment. And then there's one other suit. It's not at the top of my head right now.
Thank you.
What do you mean spot zoning for the marijuana distributor?
The one, Lake and Leaf,
Mhm.
when Lake and Leaf left, they assigned that license to somebody who moved into the building next to Lake and Leaf and then spot zoned that as an allowable use for that, and that is being challenged.
And
Lettuce.
Lettuce, yes.
other questions for Rhonda?
3-year-old every day.
Then I've got a couple of couple other questions. I wonder if you've heard any comments from the village citizens about this rate hike on their water.
Yeah, the citizens have been very active. They have had 2 writing campaigns last night and the Monday before that. They have been meeting down at Papineau's to write letters to legislators asking for earmarks or appropriations, being a squeaky wheel to let it be known that additional funding to allow people to stay in their homes is needed. There are active members of the community offering suggestions for what they feel would be an appropriate response. And that is regarding a tiered system and a tiered payment system and a different way to assess income levels for payment options. I give the community a lot of credit. I mean, they're offering, they're saying this is, this needs to be addressed and offering solutions, but it's up to the board what they want to do. And, but yeah, I mean, just the fact that the Mills Community House information session, I guesstimated 140 people there for a village that size. The community is involved. They're informed, they know what's happening, and they're trying to make a positive effort to have a good outcome.
So I did talk to my contacts at the Community Action Agency that's been helping with some of those water bills. And you and I had talked about this briefly before, in anticipation that the need might be greater. It's recommended that someone from the village get a hold of the action agency.
Okay. All right, their clerk, Diego Navarro, reports at every meeting, gives them credit for assisting with residents who need help with their water bills, and he's noted that at the last couple meetings,
Okay.
that residents are taking advantage of that.
Yeah, but it's such a significant increase. There's probably going to be a limit to what they can help.
Sure.
And you rightfully so had suggested that they may look at the sale of some assets that the community has. Did that get dismissed entirely, or is that being discussed?
I don't think it's possible. I think I've been told that there are deed restrictions on that property. I just, offhandedly, it occurred to me that they have, the village has a campground right on Crystal Lake. And, sometimes when you're having trying times with your residents, you look at every solution. to relieve the pressure. And, but my understanding is there are deed restrictions on that property for the purpose that it's being used for.
Okay, I thought it was a great, at least something to float. And one last question, did I hear you right that they may be considering sharing village managers with Benzonia?
That is a conversation that's happening. Lake Ann, the village of Lake Ann and the village of Beulah are talking about sharing a village manager.
Lake Ann.
Lake Ann.
Oh, I thought you said, okay.
What did I say?
You did say Lake Ann.
Did I? Okay.
In my mind, heard
Yeah.
Benzonia.
Oh, okay, no, Lake Ann, actually. Yeah, and the supervisor there, I believe the village president of Lake Ann has acted in a village manager role, so is very, is very familiar with what those responsibilities would be and what perhaps a shared model would look like. And nothing's been decided at this point. The Beulah village president simply asked for a consensus of the board that these conversations continue, and she received that.
Okay, well, I'm glad I asked the question.
So it's,
Our mind plays tricks on us,
yeah, it's Dan Hawkins.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's one of our bailiffs, yep.
right?
And I'll talk about community coffee when you get to mine, but we covered that at community coffee, so I'll touch on it.
Did you go to the community coffee?
I try to, yeah.
You're a good person. Tell them you're there for me, would you?
I was gonna encourage you to go in my report.
Yeah, they do the same thing. I'll move on. Christy, you have a report for us?
I do. So I'm going to report on the Grand Traverse Benzie and Leelanau County Materials Management Planning Committee. I did talk about this a little bit on Woo Woo the other morning. At our June 13th meeting, there was another ad hoc committee that looked at our third party. I think I talked about this last time. Our third party, we're accepting bids. And so we had a committee that kind of went through that, did a rubric, and they chose Fishbecks. And Fishbeck has a local liaison, Trudy Gale, I believe her name is. And she is local. I think she's out of Traverse City. They knew her in Leelanau. So she is apparently well known. They said that Fishbeck was the clear choice for the committee. What they really liked about her is her focus on data. So they're going to go through and start right away, look at data, community engagement, and strategic planning, and eventually writing the plan. And so Fishbeck is going to help us with that. They are working with other counties as well, Berry County, Saginaw County. So this isn't like new to them. Although I did ask the question, is your time going to be spent in other counties? And no, she's going to be exclusively with us. So that was great. And another reason why they chose them immediately is they had a plan to start data collection as soon as possible. Let's see. So as part of last time, we identified some waste streams, and to that last meeting, we were looking at kind of what we wanted to know. And it was clear that some know a lot about waste streams because, right, you have GFL and, a lot of waste and recycling folks there. So they kind of knew what they were, but then you had a commissioner like me who knew nothing. And so we wanted to make sure that we talked about, divided between residential and commercial, because we are under Public Act 69 that allows the county to fund recycling efforts via taxation for residential recycling only. Traverse City is not under that bucket, but Leelanau and Benzie are. So we wanted to kind of understand that, what our current recycling efforts are and what's working versus what's not, and then or maybe are non-existent. And then we wanted to know ranked by volume. And so we're gonna look deeper into that. We also compiled a list of stakeholders involved in the MMP process, so that the consultant would have an idea of who to engage. It was a really good discussion. And then, yeah, we reviewed some recycling graphics that break down solid waste composition by weight. And one thing that they want that keeps coming up is that recyclables are becoming lighter. And because the metrics are by weight, you know, things like your organic waste is full of water and is very heavy. So of course, those things are going to come out on top. So anyway, it was very interesting. So good strides are coming. Good strides are coming. And so expect to see maybe some engagement from Fishback, and please be open to that. And that's what I have.
Good report.
Tell me when your next meeting is, July 11th?
Yes, and it's in this room.
Yes,
It is here?
it's
Mhm.
here.
Okay.
Is the Fishback consultant reimbursable under the grant?
Yes, all that is being paid for by the grant.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
As well as some of Dave's wages will be reimbursable by the grant for all the work that he's putting in on behalf of the region and Benzie County for this whole process. Some of his wages are reimbursable as well, and we wrote that into the grant.
Gary, did you get your question answered about time?
Yeah, when she brought up the grant, even though that's not how the law was written, send the check.
Yes. And just to clarify, who is writing the reports and who is submitting that for reimbursement? Is that you?
Dave and I, yeah.
Dave, okay.
Because each county has to do it individually. Originally, we thought it would be regional and the DPA would do it, which would be Grand Traverse. We also thought the money would be front loaded, and a lot of things have changed along the way. The money, yeah, the money is reimbursable and each county has to submit individually, and then we have to then pay individually. So Dave and I will be working on that with Eagle to get the funding, and then our office will then facilitate payment to Grand Traverse for Fishback. It's a whole partnership deal.
Just because his name was brought up, I tell you, I run into Dave from time to time on the weekends,
Oh, okay.
and this past weekend also. I continue to be impressed with the commitment he has to making this work.
He really does.
Dave?
All right. Inland Township did have a meeting to appoint a new supervisor. I think they had 7 candidates. Some were really impressive. And they ended up appointing Ben Zeitz to be the new township supervisor. Then I attended the Colfax Township meeting. They're updating their cemetery sign, doing some work on their campgrounds. And they're having an issue with one of their trustees who used to be the zoning administrator and the secretary for the Joint Planning Commission, not releasing the files. They're working through their lawyer to basically get all of their zoning records and the things from the Joint Planning Commission so that they can move forward with their master plan. But he's pretty much been MIA, hasn't showed up to even township meetings where she's a trustee. So that's what they're working on.
When does Ben start his new position?
He's already started.
Anybody we know?
I don't recognize the name.
His wife's involved in something. I don't know.
Yeah. I thought he'd know better.
So did I.
I'm told it's in the blood.
It's in the blood.
Any questions for Dave? Dave, in the next couple of weeks, I'll be getting with you about getting you some committee assignments.
All right.
If anybody sitting at the table wants to reconsider assignments you currently have, call me, because we'll have somebody that can fill in. Otherwise, I may be taking some assignments away and reassigning them. If there's nothing else, Gary?
Option.
You by far have a lot of meetings to attend.
Weldon Township, I went to, nothing there. Environmental ag and tourism platform, we worked on the platform again. Don't think we're gonna have a meeting now for a while. That'll get brought up this fall. At, whatever that is. And I went to the budget, Village of Alberta, little turnover there. One trustee resigned. Cuba. And one volunteered, so Bill O'Dwyer is now on there. They had a treasurer and she resigned. Get into it, so the young lady that's the clerk is doing both and seems very valuable and I hope works out for her, but that was part of the problem before. There's too much pressure there, too many things going on and she has, and I have to talk to the sheriff, but he's gone. The issue came up, Parks and Rec. They continue to have a desire for a full-time person. And that, but they want to take over township parks too, and you don't see that as an option. We'll see. And the last thing I wanted to talk about, well, last two things. One was the household hazardous waste and electronics I went to. Extremely well run. So thank everybody that was involved. It was all over the. I thought it ran well. So good deal. Thank you. I had a discussion, and I think Rhonda had some of the same discussion with an individual from the fire department and some of the concerns. And I talked to Corey, and thanks to Corey, he was able to clear up a lot of it. If they have a concern about how things are done, I don't know who's on that committee.
Which one?
Fire chiefs,
Help, no.
Tim Markey.
Tim Markey. But I think if we're gonna make these things work, you have to have a cooperative agreement. And if the fire chiefs can at least present that forward, I think Corey's willing to work with them, but otherwise, too much friction here. I think it's a possibility, but I think fire chiefs have to make the first move. So I'm looking at this. I'd be happy to referee, I guess. I don't know, but I think it can be done. Just getting everybody on board. So that's all I've got.
If I could, I do want to comment on that before we leave that subject of the fire chiefs. First, I feel fairly strongly that that is about administration and their direct reports. And I'm not sure that's something commissioners should wade into. But Katie, can you take a minute to talk about what you and Corey have seen as maybe a compromise with respect to meeting this group's needs in terms of attendance?
Yeah, sure. So, well, just to kind of take it all around, the fire chiefs also have a representative on the Central Dispatch Advisory Committee. So there is that communication happening from that level. But in addition to county representation attending those meetings, if there's items on the agenda that are noted on the agenda that need county feedback, county discussion, or what have you, their leadership will reach out to the county and say, hey, we're looking at this meeting. This is the topics that we want to discuss. You know, does that work for your schedule? And then at that time, county representation would be at that committee to talk about those topics specifically, and to go through those different things. But until there won't just be general attendance going forward, most likely. It'll be on a case by case when there's a need for discussion or action or something, you know, exploring of something at that time, then the invitation will be had. Kind of like how it works for almost all boards, really. You know, I don't attend boards just to attend board meetings, but if they need me there, I'm there to address, you know, the need. And so it's really kind of going to what most boards, how they operate.
I know a lot of this stuff is not, I don't get the full picture.
Yeah.
Thank you for allowing me to talk to Corey. But if there's an issue that they would like worked out, then they need to come forward with it with the proposal. That's all I'm saying. I don't want to get any deeper.
Well, and they were here at the budget meeting, and I think that was a huge step and a huge ask for Steve Adams and Mike McGurr. And so I was happy that they were here to make that request. And I would anticipate that sort of relationship going forward. If there's some sort of request that needs to come to this board, you know, that conversation can happen and those requests can be made. So I think that was a big step for Steve and Mike to be here to make that request. It's out of their comfort zone, obviously. And it was something a little different to hear from this board as well. So.
So your Village of Alberta meeting, when the trustee resigned and another person volunteered, was there no,
Well, no, the one that they appointed had submitted a letter.
okay, so there was posting of the position and that it almost sounded like it happened at the same
Yeah.
meeting.
Well, it did.
Oh, okay,
The resignation letter was in the packet and
okay.
the letter to serve the packet, so approved one and signed the other.
Thank you.
How they work out.
Timing's everything, right? Anything else for Gary? Dave, I want to step back just for a moment.
Yep.
Was there, how many candidates was there for the Inland Township job?
7.
Oh, wow. Okay. Oh. Bob, do you have anything for us?
Minimal, but it was busy. The Lake Ann 5K annual, I think, I don't know exactly how many years this is in, but it's a benefit run. The beneficiary is Benzie County Veterans Affairs, and it's on behalf of a Lake Ann resident, Marine Corps veteran who died from exposure to burn pits while stationed in Afghanistan, brain cancer and tumors, and unfortunately, and his folks followed up with doing a fundraiser. Benzie County Veterans Affairs was very active in his claim on behalf of his family, wife and kids. So their family hosts this, and now last couple of years, the monies have been coming to Benzie County Veterans Affairs. It's a great event. They had 252 runners in the village of Lake Ann. I think the first guy crossed in about 16 minutes. So it's nuts for about an hour in the village. So I'm usually some part of that, not in the running, of course, but set up, tear down, and or I'm always down there with my ranger as far as anybody that gets hurt or needs assistance or something like that. We have checkpoints all the way around. I provide them with radios so we can communicate if there's any issues. Another Benzie County Veterans Affairs, the motorcycle, there is a motorcycle group out of Manistee who likes to go for an annual ride or a couple different rides. In this, over the past weekend, they decided to come up here, make a loop from Manistee, stop at the Benzie County Veterans Memorial, which they've done in the past. We provided them lunch. There was about 65 riders. They made a loop then over to Lake Michigan and back down to Manistee. It's great having them. They were state police led the procession. Benzie County was part of it as well. It's a great event. It's a good fundraiser. I know some of the guys that are retired road commission. I know a couple of them, and former Benzie County Sheriff and or police officer John Brzezowski has a bike. So it's nice catching up with some of those, and I know some of the Manistee guys too. So it's not like I did a lot of meetings, but I spent a lot of time doing them. So but it was beneficial all the way around. And Area Agency on Aging, I caught that one too. So Candy's very good at what she does, and she'll be an asset to Area Agency on Aging.
Questions or comments for Bob on his report?
How often do they meet? Like quarterly
Who's that?
area?
Yeah.
Vacancy? Quarterly?
Meetings are quality, not quantity, right?
Yeah.
What do we bring? What do we take away? That's really what's important.
Yeah.
My report, Platte Township, they continue to work and are focused on their planning and zoning. with Benzonia Township. There are issues that they need to consider going forward, and this is in discussions with them. This isn't just my own conclusion, is always going to be revenue. Your parcels are very big, and they, for 20 years, have been talking about revenue, and now they're starting to have a more serious conversation about parcel sizes. Under the agenda review, and I think that we'll probably talk about this more this afternoon, but we need to not just talk about the budget this afternoon, but we need to talk about what does the next 2 or 3 years looks like. And I think Katie was able to use BSNA to do some forecasting, and we'll talk more about that. But I've heard loud and clear that 2 or 3 years could be a risk. Well, we've got a significant surplus right now. What I don't want to find out is we whittled that down and then lost our opportunity to prepare ourselves for what that 3rd or 4th year might look like. And I'm not going to try to guess right now what that investment could be today, but I think we need to be talking about that. With respect to the EDC, we talked about BEAD funding for broadband. What we learned is that the BEAD funding is kind of being controlled to the extent that they want all the communities to resubmit their original request for consideration, with the exception of Benzie and Ingham County. And Katie, when you give your report, I'll ask you to elaborate on that. Also regarding broadband, I think we should keep in front of us this digital equity piece that I think we're working through Grow Benzie with. And if there's anything to be said about that today, I'd appreciate that. Dan Barshecki, who is the chair of the EDC, and myself will be representing initially the county's EDC on this relationship that we formed with the chamber, and that's just developing now. And as a result, the EDC board, the county EDC board, is going to go to quarterly meetings, or as needed in case something comes up with Brownfield. So no less frequently than quarterly right now, but as needed. For the Community Action Agency, for those of you that aren't aware of this, they purchased a location at 9938 Honor Highway, Shirley's old salon. They're going to be having an open house scheduled soon where the commissioners will get invited to come in and see how they're going to use that location, and maybe have some discussions about what other uses could there be for that would benefit the community. And I'll keep you posted on that. As information only, there's this tax program that the agency does every year, and they do it in a regional level. Here in Benzie County, I believe Senior Resources participates and Bacon participates. What's important for me in this is that as a result of them doing the tax returns, they identified $4 million in refunds that, quite frankly, in my opinion, translate into some level of economic contribution, because those monies will get respent back in our communities, pretty significant. And I think that'll be it. Any questions?
Well, what's the objective of Platte Township? They're gonna start breaking the properties into smaller pieces instead of the 20-acre chunks?
Well, yeah, they're a long ways from that. All right. But as the leadership group has told me, Gary, 20 years ago, they knew that they were going to have a revenue problem because they got minimum lot sizes, in many cases of 20s. They need to come and revisit that. But that's a discussion that has to take place at their township level. Paula's sitting there scratching her head thinking, really? But she lives in Platte Township. But it's just their reality. And now I think they need to start taking it more seriously. They're probably the poorest township that we have in our community. Thanks for the observation, though.
I don't know how you townships equitable. And you got one back to back. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, it couldn't
Good
be
luck
more
with them.
different, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Anything else? If not, Katie?
All right. Start from the bottom on mine. So TARP is having a groundbreaking ceremony on July 11th at 11 a.m. They are starting on the project down there in Thompsonville, where the train car is. They're working through that project to create that park. There's also some trail work also being done in the area. So July 11th at 11 a.m. if you'd like to attend that groundbreaking ceremony. The Frankfurt recycling site, as you know, we have a short-term contract with Mr. Rainier to move those. We moved those recycling sites off the water. I just want to keep it in the back of your mind. We do need to find a more permanent location for those sites. The site is working okay right now, but it's not really a great option. There's a lot of negative feedback from the neighbors around Mr. Rainier's property. There's a lot of work that Mr. Rainier is putting into the project and into the site as well, and it's just not a long-term solution. So based on the conversations that Dave is having and I've had and Joanne, he's going to fulfill his short-term contract with the county, but we really need to be thinking about a more long-term permanent solution for the recycling in that area. I see your face.
The way, I mean, it seems like such a good spot. What are their concerns?
The neighbors are having a lot of concerns with the blowing trash, you know, because it's so heavily used. There's trash and debris into the wetland area around there. There's a lot going on.
From a distance, it looks quite clean, but that's
And
from a
that's-
distance driving by.
Yeah, and he's putting a lot of time and energy into it, I think more so than he probably anticipated, even though he did this in the past. And so there's a lot of feedback coming, and it's just not a permanent solution, period. So just be thinking about that. And we're having those conversations, but I would appreciate any feedback you guys have as well.
Completely given up on that other lot. We were.
Behind the shell.
We have not completely given up on that. I think though we've drawn almost to the end of the line as far as what additional monetary or service support that the city is willing to give. Every time it's brought up about working through this, you know, as a group, you know, it's, well, the city's already spent this much money and, you know, the county this. So it's not off the table, but there's a lot more conversation that needs to be had about that. I don't see any sort of 50-50, you know, relationship split with the city. It just doesn't seem like we're getting there. It's going to have to be more of a county effort to utilize that or utilize any other space. Let's see here. I just want to remind everybody that Friday is our cookout. We do have training in this room in the morning with Cole Stoker and Toski regarding FOIA, OMA, closed sessions and such. Just a reminder for the public, this is a public meeting. So this is not a two-way conversation with the public or any attendees. This is for the Board of Commissioners. And it will be treated as a public meeting. So there'll be public comment at the beginning and the end. And then it is the discretion of the chair and the board to ask, like, if staff has any feedback or comments that they want to make. But just a reminder, it is a public meeting. So we'll be following that sort of decorum throughout that. That is,
Before you leave that, it sure seems like a study session to me. Want to chair that in Friday?
I wonder where you're going with that.
We can talk about it later. If you want.
Friday is projected to rain by like 95%. Who knows if it'll rain? So if it rains on Friday for the cookout, we will divert and be in this building, probably in room 121 downstairs, because there won't be time to set up in this room. So just keep that in mind. If it's raining, we'll be downstairs in 121 for our cookout. And maybe we'll play cornhole in the hallway. I don't know.
We
So
plan on setting up outside otherwise.
in the parking area there, the dispatch and emergency management parking
top.
area. Yep, up top. That's typically where we have the cookout. But the training space is being utilized down there for some other training. So if it rains, we'll divert to this building. Otherwise, we'll plan to be up the hill and we'll have some tents set up and stuff too. So
That's countywide, correct? Or sorry.
county staff, yeah,
County
and
staff.
county staff, yep. And MSU Extension, parole and probation, the folks on this campus essentially. So not the guy down the street.
I
unfortunately.
could set up a couple of tents for you, but I can't set them up on concrete or asphalt.
Right, yeah, there's not a lot of yard space either, so it's all right. We'll divert downstairs if we have to, but I'm guessing it's not gonna rain, right? No raining. That's all I got to say. So I just want to bring your attention to some committee appointments. I'm trying to announce these at our meetings because we don't get a ton of applications for committees. So the Benzie and Leelanau Health Department Board of Appeals, we are still seeking 2 positions to fill there.
Am I
Economic,
still on that?
the Board of Appeals.
Thank you.
The Economic Development Committee, they are meeting now quarterly versus the 3rd Friday of each month because of the changes happening, but there are open positions on that board if somebody would like to be part of that. Parks and Recreation, there are positions there, 3 positions. The Benzie Transportation Authority has positions, and there's an upcoming position on the DHHS Maples board also coming forward. So if anyone in the community would like to be involved in any of those committees, we're happy to take applications. On our website, there is a box right in the middle and it says employment and volunteer opportunities. We also have quite a few job postings up there if anyone is interested. We have scheduled 2 benefits committee meetings, which is the unofficial subcommittee of staff, and I'd invite any commissioner to also be part of that committee. But really the idea is to allow folks to be part of that benefits renewal process, to see the RFPs that come in for the different benefits, to be part of the conversation, to offer any suggestions and those sorts of things. So we are having those meetings. The first one is going to be July 7th. So if any of you would like to attend July 7th at 10 a.m. in room 206, we're going to kind of give that first look into what administration sees from a benefits side of things. As a reminder, we are closed July 4th, next Friday. Already next Friday is Independence Day and we will be closed. So just keep that in mind to the community. I did have a meeting yesterday with the Animal Welfare League to kind of gain their temperature and their thoughts on being part of the long-term future solution of the animal shelter in Benzie County as well as the region. I am working to set up a meeting with Nate Alger next week to talk to him about a possible regionalization of animal control and animal shelter. So those conversations are happening. I'm not sure how receptive the Animal Welfare League is. They are going to have a full board meeting and talk about it at their board meeting coming up next month. So I'll know more then, but I'm not sure how receptive they are to being part of any sort of future discussions related to the animal shelter here in Benzie County as well as around the region. I did, after the last meeting, I appreciate this board for moving the study session so that I could go over to Crystal Mountain. I did present at the Small Towns and Rural Communities Conference. Went really, really well. We did kind of just like a fireside conversation with those in the room, and it just went really, really well. We talked about our broadband project, and we talked about how here in Benzie County and our grassroots effort to just come together as a community to make things happen, specifically the broadband project and others. So it was a really cool fireside conversation with folks from all over the state of Michigan, and that went really, really well. On to broadband. So first is BEAD. So with all the changes at the federal level that we're all talking about on various different facets, there's also a lot of changes happening to the money that was set aside for broadband fiber specifically, the BEAD funding. You've probably heard the acronym over the years called BEAD. And Benzie County, working with Cherry Capital Communications and Mitch Shapiro and others, we've been really working through this BEAD process. And we had a challenge process where we challenged addresses that said they were served and we knew they weren't, and those sorts of things. With all the changes at the federal level, they're now redistributing those funds to be for internet and not necessarily fiber broadband. So they are giving some preference to satellite and other means of connection to internet. So it used to be just fiber, 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 fiber. We're all putting in fiber. Well, now the federal government is shifting that and saying, well, it's internet service. It's internet service. And so that pot of money is changing color a little bit. And so there's been this pushback to the states saying that everyone needs to relook at their projects and, talk about their projects differently and have a different idea out there and what connection means versus what connection isn't. But I will say, and as Art said, Benzie County and Ingham County are the only 2 counties in Michigan that weren't told to go back to the drawing board. So that looks really good for us. What that says to me is our project is favored likely at the federal level. We're under a good light. Our project looks good. So we weren't told to go back to the drawing board to start over on our project. It was given essentially a pass in that whole situation. So that's really, really good. We have no idea when we're going to hear, though. As you know, everything's kind of still in the air for a lot of federal funding. But what I know is that we look more favorable than other counties at this point from our project standpoint.
Before you leave that, I want to point something out. We sometimes question about making investments and bringing consultants and professionals on. No coincidence, I think, that Ingham County and Benzie County were both being represented by Mitch Shapiro.
That's correct. That's the only two counties. So he lives in Ingham County. So he's been kind of moonlighting there as a resident of Ingham County. And then he's been our paid consultant. And those are the only two counties that came out favorably in those changes in federal law.
So
Or
that
not law, but
investment this group
budgeting.
made, it's probably 3 years ago now, has really paid off for Benzie County over the years.
It has. I mean, we're still talked about favorably in the broadband world, the rural, rural communities world, all the things. People really look to Benzie County and the different things that we've done here, which gets into the Mitten grant. There was a grant that was received on behalf of the region by Grow Benzie for over $800,000, and that was to roll out digital equity and digital education into the region. Well, that was sucked back with all the changes of DEI, right? DEI is very faux pas right now. And so that money was all sucked back, and our region, as well as no other region, is going to receive those funds. There is a petition out there right now that a bunch of agencies have signed on to, trying to convince the federal government to change their minds. But as of now, it's gone. So that was really unfortunate. We weren't looking to, it wasn't about DEI per se. It was about education, digital literacy, digital education, and helping folks use the internet once they have it. So we're trying to figure out some sort of grassroots effort to really roll this out still in Benzie County. As you know, we always pick up our bootstraps and we come together as a community, and that's what we're looking to do on a local level. We're talking to the libraries, and we're starting the conversations with the schools to see if there's way that are low cost or free that we can work together to accomplish the same goal, accomplish the same mission. One of the ideas that I had thrown out there is our high school students need community service volunteer hours. Our senior population would really like to know how to use Facebook. Right there is digital literacy. Bring those two seniors together, senior and senior, bring them together, low cost, free. They know how to use the computer at that point with those basic things. These kids know how to use technology better than most of us. They can help those seniors potentially and gain those hours they need for the school. So some of those more grassroots, small community type efforts that would cost, essentially nothing. Those are the things we're looking at to try to still roll out that mission of digital literacy in our community.
And although we can do it economically, Katie, we still have, of the 200,000 we originally allocated, we still have about 60,000 left.
Correct.
So if we needed to make an investment, we could.
Yep. We're not that far yet, but yeah, that is a possibility.
And if I could also comment on that. So, talking about, like maybe using libraries. One thing that I've run into, as a librarian is that even though, kids, are volunteering, if they're under the age of 18, they still need a work permit, even though they are volunteering.
Yep. Okay. That's good to know. Community coffee. So I wanted to encourage the folks of this board, not just those of Elmira and the Village of Lake Ann, to attend community coffee. Dan Hawkins, he's one of our bailiffs, but he's also the village president of Lake Ann. He hosts community coffee at the Red Door at 7:30 a.m. the second Wednesday of the month. And it's an unofficial 45 minutes to an hour, hello, greet, talk about what's happening in Lake Ann and that area, but also talking about what's happening in the community. We talk about events. It's a really good spot to just meet new people and, share like interests. And so I would encourage folks to attend that. I try to go. I just went to the last one. It went really, really well. I used that time to talk about county business. When we had millages on the ballot, I would talk about that sort of thing. And there's a lot of folks there. Some months there's like 50 people. Other times there's like 20 people. But still, there's a lot of folks, a lot of walks of life, and there's a lot of people from all around the county that attend that. And it's just a really great 45 minutes to an hour Dan likes to call it the unofficial board of the village. And so usually what he does is he talks about the items that happened at the village meeting the night before, which is how we had a long conversation about the possibility of combining village managers. Dan in his past life was with the village of Kingsley. He helped out there. And so he does have experience with that. And so him and I have kind of talked about, you know, the pros and cons of that and what that might look like if that's a possibility coming forward. So I would encourage anyone to attend. I can forward you the invite. He sends out a reminder a few days before the meeting, and I can forward that on to all of you if you'd like to try to attend.
I do get that already.
You do get it? Great.
You been to that, Bob?
No, thank you.
Sharon goes.
My wife, I can send my wife.
Mhm.
You send your wife?
We'd start something like that up in Benzonia.
It's really cool. So along that same lines, Hawk and I have talked about putting together some sort of county executives luncheon. And when I say county executives, I don't mean just the folks in this building. We're looking at the executives around the county, right? So you're looking at the village presidents and the township supervisors, maybe the CEO or COO of Paul Oliver and the health department and these various, and just kind of bringing those folks together because they're the folks who are, you know, leading a lot of these organizations that are creating change and creating our community living. And so they do it in Grand Traverse County, is my understanding. They do it in some other counties. And Hawk used to attend in his prior life before he was our bailiff. And he really got a lot from those connections that he would make monthly, quarterly at these luncheons. And so the Rotary was there and the Chamber was there and just these various county executives luncheon. And so he asked about maybe trying to put something together like that here in Benzie County. So I wanted to hear your feedback on that. Do you think that's an idea? Do you think that's something we should run with? Do you think it's silly? I just wanted to hear your feedback before I went too far with all of that.
I like it.
Yeah.
My feedback.
Well, thanks. Anybody else?
You like it well enough to organize it?
Organize it.
Well, I think it's a matter of, I mean, I have a lot of the contact information for a lot of the community, honestly. I'm guessing the relationship that I'm developing with Norm Plumstead, he might be able to help me with getting some contact information as well with some of the bigger business owners and such. And it would just be an open invitation to those folks to spend an hour and to just, you know, network for an hour and, you know, toss ideas and that sort of thing. And just kind of, you know, hear from these folks around one table versus around 12. That was just the kind of just to keep the open line of communication happening in the community. So am I hearing a try to throw something together kind of thing? I mean, Rhonda was vocal, but
Let's try it and see how it works out.
yeah.
You know, the only question I would put out there is, there was a time in my adult life, like Rotary and Kiwanis used to serve that role.
Mm-hmm.
They don't serve that role anymore?
Well, Rotary has their meeting, but it's for their Rotary members. And they invite speakers on a periodic. So I go annually to both of the Rotaries and just give an update on the county. But that's, you know, member focused. I don't know about the Aquinas Association at all, but this would be, there's no member, there's really not really a commitment. This is a come to network. And if you can't make it or don't feel that it's worthwhile, then don't come. Or if you want to send your, you know, your assistant, send them, but it'd be really an unofficial sort of, you know, luncheon that was held quarterly, maybe just to bring the minds around the table.
I guess I'm hearing from your board that the majority would like to explore something.
Okay.
Heard.
I'll look at it a little more and I'll
Really
talk
did
to
from
Hawk.
this side of the room. I was ignoring these two completely.
I'll talk to Hawk about it a bit more. I only went to maybe 2 of the ones in Grand Traverse and that was years ago. So I don't really know what their structure is like anymore. He would have attended more recent style because of his time in Kingsley. So I'll see what he's really, we'll talk about it some more and see what we can bring together.
I don't know how to take the non-comment. I feel like you should pull the group and see if they want it to move forward or not. I think just being silent and not saying anything is not supporting. So I believe Christy said yes, she'd like to see it move forward. I would like to see it move forward. I think it's a good idea. If it doesn't fly, it doesn't fly, but
Yeah.
at least we tried.
I heard Bob making some noises over here.
Yeah, I did. I agreed with you.
Gary?
You were ignoring us, so I'm gonna keep.
Yeah, I said I would attend.
Yeah,
There was something.
Okay, you would attend, but
yeah.
did you feel strongly enough that you would be willing to organize it?
Yeah.
To me, that's always the key.
Katie.
I can tell you, I tried to bring together township supervisors like 4 years ago to try to create that conversation happening more. It wasn't successful. So I'll try again. It's gonna be fine. I'll try again.
Their own little network.
I know. But I mean, it's almost unfortunate that we don't have some of that happening in this county, you know. I've worked in 2 other municipalities where those things did happen, and I've heard of other counties where they bring together their folks, you know, on a quarterly basis or what have you, just to keep the lines of communication open, because we all have very important things we're working on, and I think sometimes we forget how it affects our neighbors. And so it's just an idea to keep the communication open.
I think rotating the meeting around the county too would be a benefit to different business owners.
Oh, yeah.
So that'd be.
Okay. I'll see what I can figure out. It might be too much, so we'll see.
Gary, did we hear from you?
Yeah, I'm good with whatever you guys want to do.
He's gonna organize it for me.
He was kind of like a notepad.
Like that, having it at the farm.
Follower.
Perfect. Okay. And then the last thing on my list is very unfortunate. My assistant Stephanie has put in her time. Her last day will be next Thursday in our office. So we have posted for that position. She's got some lifestyle changes ahead of her. And so it just isn't going to work for her to come to work every day. Unfortunately, so we're going to miss her. We're sad that she was only here 6 months, but I get it. Sometimes you have to be mom, and I can appreciate her making that tough decision. I couldn't imagine being in that position to have to make that tough decision. So, but we'll miss her. So if you know of anybody, we have an opening, and we have other openings as well. Paramedic, EMT, equalization technician. I mean, almost anything. Walk the dogs, clean the cat pens.
Katie, does the fact that 1/3 of your staff is leaving this time of year and the projects that I've given you and others are hoping to get done, does that put any of that at jeopardy in terms of timelines?
At this point, I don't think so. I'm pretty flexible in the sense is I have a nanny who can jump in and fill in and come early and stay late. So for me, it should be fine. I'm not aware of something that's going to delay at this point. I mean, we're into the summer now. And so while things get a little louder in the community for, say, public safety and first responders, they're not necessarily louder for the building all the time, because, you know, we serve more of the residential population than the visitors. And so at this point, I'm okay. But as I identify maybe some issues of being behind and stuff, I'll let you know that.
Just be communicating with Rhonda and myself.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any other questions or comments for Katie?
Sorry, it was a long one.
Nope, you did good. I appreciate the thoroughness. You have the correspondence in your packet. I'll move to our last public comment.
Hello, I'm Annie Browning. I live in Frankfurt. And I'm just going to talk about what I've seen in the community, because, you know, I go out every week and do stuff too. So, and I've read about the Village of Beulah, the water bills. You guys were talking about it earlier. It's devastating. I mean, I'm glad I'm not living there anymore. It's bittersweet, but I was told by a friend of mine who was the president of Village of Honor, and they had a similar situation. He said that the problem is, and the lesson that we can learn from it, is that Village of Beulah should have invested 20 years ago when things were like starting to be outdated, and they were like, no, they kicked the can down the road. And so now it's really unfortunate, and there's no real way around it. They need to, if they want to have a water system, they need to invest all this money. That's what the state says. So anyway, I'm moved out of the Village of Beulah, and so I'm in the city of Frankfurt now. And so I went to their recent city, or their last city meeting, and I was really surprised by how much people were railing against, well, a number of things, but they were railing against specifically, one of the things was this emergency communications tower. I was like, what? It's emergency communications. Why would you be concerned about that? And so they were under the impression that they were just, I think it was just for money. So they're like, the comment was that they don't want them to be, the city to be making money on a communications tower. So anyway, there's some disconnect between like, I mean, what I had heard is that it was always for emergency communications. And so that message got lost apparently. And then the last thing that became clear to me today is that I want to start going, I need to go to the Village of Alberta meeting. So I've never been there, and I always like to go to the different meetings. So thank you.
Thank you.
I just make a clarification real quick. There are two towers.
Yeah.
One is an emergency communication tower, which is located on, help me here,
Day.
Day Avenue. There's also a tower that was put up on Bellows Avenue, and has litigation surrounding it. So yeah, just for clarification there.
Yeah. So far, our tower hasn't had any backlash. I mean, it's getting muddy though, because there's two towers. One's for
yeah.
emergency, one's the city of Frankfurt's tower. Mm-hmm.
Rhonda, I appreciate you doing that because I was gonna call Rebecca up and ask her to explain.
There's nothing.
See, communication is everything. So now we've got that clear. Anybody else from the public? Going once, going twice? Anybody consider it done? Anybody opposed to adjourning? We will, the study session then will start at 1:45.